Good evening, everybody. I have to unmute myself. I muted myself as soon as the promo went live, just so that I wasn't like coughing or sputtering through it. And then Cookies made a comment in chat where she didn't understand something I said, but she'd missed a comment. How's everybody doing? First of all, thank you. I'm thrilled to be here. It's Wednesday night. This is my normal Wednesday night thing. And as I've mentioned a million times before, there are many occasions where Wednesday night showtime rolls around and I'm like, yeah, I really don't want to do a show. And without fail, every time by the time the show is over, I am thrilled to have done it, not just because there's people interacting, but because this is kind of therapeutic for me. I'm already in a better mood than I was 35 minutes ago when I was getting ready to, sit down in the chair and do the tech check ahead of time. Let me tell you guys some stuff that's been going on and why I'm not going to bother talking about it. I know that the standard fare for the hang up is I show up, tell you what I'm hung up on, kind of rant about something. Then I bring in my guest, and usually it's kind of has something to do with my guest. And then we talk about it for a while. And then, of course, we take calls and then we take super chats. That's the standard show here. It's somewhere between an hour and a half and 57 hours long. Probably won't go more than 2 or 3 tonight for sure. But I got a package in the mail today from a kind of an anonymous source. I mean, they did put a return address on the envelope, although they didn't include their name. They didn't include any sort of message or anything else. But the package itself was a bunch of creationist propaganda. It had a printed article from a September 2006 creationist magazine about diamonds and carbon dating, which is it's exactly what you'd expect. They don't understand the difference between carbon dating and radiometric dating, and they're trying to discredit it all with that. Then there's a printed copy of the Stanford Encyclopedia of Philosophy's article on phenomenology, as if they couldn't have just sent me a link, as if I hadn't already read this, etc. There's also an additional article on speaking in tongues and how some scientific studies showed that people speaking in tongues weren't using particular parts of their brain. And then it included a book called The God Reality, which is a response to Dawkins' The God Delusion, another book on the evidence for creation, another book on evolution's Achilles heels, and that was accompanied by a DVD of evolution's Achilles heels, all of it in an envelope with no other information. And yeah, I don't know when or if I'll get to all of that because there's a lot of stuff going on. But my life is clearly probably not like most of your lives. And there were some people who were like, why is that weird? And I was like, well, now I have to have extra security at my house. Can I have your home address to start sending you random stuff as well? But last week, as I mentioned on Sunday's show, I was in Tampa, Florida to have a debate on the resurrection with Than Christopoulos. That went really well. And I thoroughly enjoyed it. Than's a great guy. We've had conversations since then. But Than, during the Q&A portion, mentioned a miracle healing, and I don't want to misrepresent it, so I'm not going to go into any detail right now, but essentially he gave me the name of someone and asked what I thought about this miracle healing, and he mentioned it as if it was something that perhaps I should have been aware of, and that it was a good example of a medically documented healing from cerebral palsy. And I, on the spot, I didn't know anything about it, but I have since started looking into it in detail, including some information that Than sent me, including a PDF and some other things. I will be doing not just a debate review of the debate, but there will be a separate video just about this particular miracle healing and what it does and doesn't mean. I've already spoken to 2 medical doctors and spent several hours yesterday researching and trying to get information about it. So watch for those videos coming up as well. Those will be on my personal YouTube channel. And you can go to patreon.com/atheistdebates to sign up to get advanced viewing of those if you want to. I haven't been advertising my Patreon nearly enough. And so I advertised it the other day for my birthday, got a few new patrons. So, I figured I'd mention it here as well, especially because that video is going to be incredibly interesting to do. Investigating a proposed miracle healing, trying to get the documentation to confirm, because what you need to do is confirm that this person was medically diagnosed with this condition and that the treatment and all the other things were documented. And then the details about the healing and follow-ups and medical confirmation. So watch for that video. I can tell you already that it feels like I'm debunking a fraud more than I am chronicling a rather weak example of a proposed healing. I spent much of today arguing with atheists. I know. For those of you who are calling in, yes, we will be taking calls. Theists will always have priority on the shows that I do, and I'm happy to argue with theists. But I also spend a good deal of time arguing with atheists. And today I spent time arguing about a number of things: ethics, abortion, racism, bad memes, bad strategy. I was slandered and attacked and maligned and accused of being angry just for defending myself and saying that's not what I said. And, but it was wild. And then I thought, you know what? None of that matters. Let's find out what's going on in the world of politics today, because it's Wednesday. And then I started getting all the information about what's going on in Florida, and how Florida's going to have abortion initiatives on the ballot, and there's a number of really important elections coming up and other issues. And then I thought, what's going on with Trump? And then Trump, I found out just a couple hours ago that the $175 million bond that he put up was actually rejected by the court because of some improper filing. Because when you hire, the same people who are giving out car loans to really risky individuals who are unlikely to pay, maybe they don't always fill out the paperwork right, so they're going to have to redo some paperwork there. And then there's the whole thing with Truth Social, and people were buying stock in this, and it skyrocketed, and then it fell off of a cliff, and now Trump's evidently suing or going after some of his other investors because he wants more money, wants to try to get on it. And I was like, enough. I just can't. I need good news. Now, there's an eclipse coming up, a total solar eclipse, and my house is within a mile of totality. That was the fun thing for me this week. There are some people who are coming to town to visit, and some of them are staying here, some of them are staying outside of town. There are people who are going to be out in Fredericksburg, which is about an hour and a half away, which is like on the center line of totality. There's others that are heading up, going to Lampasas and other things like that. But the updated path of this solar eclipse literally passes and includes McKinney Falls State Park and some areas, in South Austin that are close enough to my house that we're pretty much going to have totality here at our house, which is great because Monday is also rodent day for us as breeders. There are 3 reptile expos coming up in April, so I'm swamped with all that, and none of any of that has anything to do with tonight's guest. And so it was like, man, I'm scrambling to find something that I feel like talking about. And I didn't want to show up and just whine about all the crap that I had to deal with today or how somebody sent me a bunch of creation and stuff. So don't take any of that. I'm done whining. It's time to actually start winning. Tonight, normally we read all the super chats that are $10 or more. Tonight, we're going to do all of them that are $5 or more. Theists will still have priority, but today is all about, I want to get my guest in here so that she could participate and that you guys can ask us questions, and you can let us know what good things are going on in your life, what successes and wins have you had, what are you looking forward to. Let's try and keep today slightly more positive. So Eve, who is now the host of Chewed Gum, which aired last night, welcome back. How are you?
Thank you. I'm great. I'm so excited to hang out. I feel you on the whole, it's like you have a long day, then you have to log in, and then you're like, oh, this is actually what I love to do. This is why I have these long days with other obnoxious conversations. It's so we can do this. So I'm excited to be here. I'm excited to hear some good news from people too.
So we've already got callers queued up. I'm going to jump right into it. I'm going to get a couple quick announcements and then let Eve make an announcement, and then we're going to take calls right away. First of all, this is one of many shows on the Line Network, and all of them are call-in shows of some sort or another, including the various debate shows that we do. But this Sunday, I believe on the Sunday show, it's going to be myself and Paul, but we're not completely sure about that just now. Skep Talks hosts and co-hosts on Monday are going to be kind of to be determined. I know that a lot of us are going to be busy with Eclipse stuff on Monday, but Tuesday, Eve will be back with Alyssa for an episode of Chewed Gum, and so that's always
Yes.
exciting. You guys have been killing it.
Thank you. We're having so much fun. It has been so fun. We've had some really cool calls, amazing conversations. I'm learning a ton from Alyssa. She's so smart, so good at what she does, and really good at communicating it. So if you guys haven't watched it yet, you have to tune in. It's a little different than all the other shows in a fun way. I think it adds a new flavor, for lack of a better word.
Well, I think the first caller that we're actually going to get to in just a moment is somebody that you've already actually spoken to on your show as well. Just as a reminder, next Wednesday's episode of The Hang Up, my friend Phil Ferguson will be here to talk about his skeptic money and other things like that. You had something you were going to address just before we jumped into calls, and so I'm gonna stop talking long enough for you to. I'm gonna allow you to talk.
Thanks for allowing me to talk. This is my one little preface. I keep getting a lot of comments, even today when I announced the show, and whenever I've guested with you, and actually with other people, even with Jimmy, of people saying, "Oh, are they going to actually let you talk tonight?" And I want to just make a couple points. Number one, we have a delay. If you guys listen on Tuesday night, you're going to hear Alyssa and I being really annoying, saying, sorry for interrupting, because it's so easy to interrupt someone on here. You hear it with the callers, and Matt and I have that delay between each other as well. Matt has been doing this long enough that he knows to keep talking if that happens. Also, sometimes I don't have anything to say, and that's why Matt is talking. And I really appreciate that. That's why there's multiple people on these shows, is so that if something is somebody else's strength, they can say it. I know how to speak up for myself. I will talk when I want to talk. Matt and I are friends. He's going to let me talk. He doesn't have to let me talk, but this is a two-way street. We're very polite with each other. You guys, I appreciate you looking out for me, but I got this. And Matt doesn't interrupt me. We got a delay. That's my hang up.
See, tonight it's Eve's hang up. But on that note, I want to get kind of right into callers because evidently this is someone who you spoke to.
Yeah, I spoke to him a lot last night.
I haven't spoke to at all. So David in Illinois is a theist, pronouns him, who's calling in to talk about what he believes in why, which is perfect. So welcome to the show, David. You're on with Matt and Eve.
Hi, how are you?
Hey. Doing all right. How are you?
Hey, good. Thanks for calling again.
Good. No problem. I mean, I just want to discuss spirituality and these things because they're important to me. So,
well, what do you mean by spirituality?
I mean, it's a bit of a difficult term to define for me, but I would say that it's a belief in something that transcends the mundane, right? Something that goes beyond the material existence that we are all subjected to, and in that sense it's more desirable than the material, I would say. But I mean that's like the most, I don't know, base definition I can come up with. But
I'm not sure I understand. I get it that it's very difficult to define, but I don't know how to have a conversation about something if we can't be more specific about what it is. Because when you're just like, it's something greater than the mundane, cool. But so maybe if instead of just flat out trying to define it, if you could describe what it is that you're talking about, then I'd be happy to jump in.
I mean, I'm talking about, something that is unconditioned, in that it's the natural state of the mind. So I don't know where I'm going with this, but it's a practice to bring about the unconditioned mind that is infinitely peaceful and contented. And I would say that the mundane and the material, owing to its impermanence, is undesirable and stressful. which is why there's a need to go beyond that to achieve a higher sense of joy and contentment in life. Right?
David, I think
I think that is the basis of spirituality.
David, let me try to help, because last night we kind of went around in a few circles. We were able to, have a conversation about the topic of pleasure, which obviously we're talking about something different. And last night, I think where we landed, and when I was like, why don't you call back tomorrow night, is you claimed that there is an objective standard that you would, say that is basically your God. And so can we figure out what that objective standard is and why you believe in this objective standard? How would we detect this objective? Like, can we pick something along those lines that's a little bit easier for us to even know? Because everything you're saying is so abstract. It's just like, oh, okay, this is a random thing that you think.
Yeah. I mean, it is pretty abstract because the God that I believe in is not, like the Orthodox Abrahamic God, right? It's more the Hindu concept of Brahman. I'm not sure how familiar you are with that, but I think that is a good place to start with what I believe in. Because I believe that there is a state of mind that is uncreated, that goes beyond the mundane. It transcends impermanence. And I think that is union with the absolute, which is the principle that guides all activity and underlies all activity in the universe. Okay. For example, impermanence is one of those.
We're getting back to like more abstract.
So,
yeah, okay. I'm sorry.
I would really love for this to actually be productive, and hopefully you don't take this the wrong way. But I feel like every sentence you've uttered so far in attempting to describe this could be condensed to you're seeking joy and contentment, and then a bunch of things that a Deepak Chopra nonsense phrase generator or ChatGPT could have spewed out. I need something substantive, because if all you're saying is you're looking for joy and contentment, congratulations. But if you're saying that there's some kind of God thing that is a spiritual thing you're seeking, we need to know what it is, how you know it's real, how you're going about seeking it. Is this a valuable truth that you think everybody, this isn't just about what you believe and why, it's why should anybody believe this stuff?
I mean, I think there is a state where it's infinitely peaceful, and that's why it's worth, exerting yourself to chase after
let me try this, David. David, let me try this.
Okay.
Let me just take that one phrase, infinitely peaceful. When the universe reaches heat death and nothing is doing anything anywhere, wouldn't that be infinite peace?
I mean, I believe that there would still be activity, albeit on a very minute scale in that case.
No, that's not what the heat death of the universe is. I'm saying when the universe reaches heat death and everything stops doing anything, wouldn't that, by definition, be as close to infinite peace as could possibly exist? What could be more peaceful than a universe at peace at heat death?
I mean, the peace that I'm referring to has to do with sentience, right? And I don't believe that, everything has this quality of sentience and spiritual aptitude. So I don't think that's applicable here.
Okay, so you're not talking about infinite peace. You're talking about maximal peace from a sentient perspective.
Sure.
How do you know what that is, or how to achieve it, or if it's possible, and why is it the goal?
I mean, do you believe that suffering is undesirable, in that, you would rather suffer as little as possible and achieve as much peace and contentment as possible?
No, I'm not convinced that it is necessarily the case that the absolute minimal suffering is an ideal. I think there is some amount of suffering that is both beneficial in that it learns, and you learn things and you gain a better understanding, and that it's a part of the world. I think generally people object to excessive suffering, but I don't necessarily
Okay.
know that, but even if I agreed that eliminating suffering or minimizing suffering was a goal, what does that have to do with spirituality? I could be fine with
I mean,
reducing
that's the goal of
suffering, and
spirituality.
I'm still talking. I could be fine with reducing suffering, and I don't know why you consider that spiritual or why it's some truth to seek.
Because I think the method for actually achieving that aim is beyond the mundane. As in, material objects and material pursuits cannot actually allow you to attain that. So that's why I think it's, intricately related with
Can you define the word mundane?
ideas.
Because on multiple
Yeah.
occasions here, you've
Sure.
said beyond the mundane. Define mundane.
Sure. I would say mundane are things that, let me sort of formulate my response here. I mean, I would say that they're impermanent, and owing to that impermanence, they're unsatisfactory. I would say that they are fabricated by the mind, in that there are things that are put together with smaller and less, more base level principles, such as, elements and other lower level building blocks, right? That's what I'm talking about when I say mundane.
But your ideas that you're presenting to us are put together by your mind. So do those not go under the category of mundane?
But I don't
How do you know that? How do you know that your ideas
put together by the mind, though?
Right. So how do you? So there we go. How do you know that this thing that you're presenting to us is reality and not just something you're describing to us? Where is this objective source that you've received this information from?
Because I believe that there is a way to eradicate all suffering, and that is why, Sure.
I'm really trying, David, and I appreciate you calling. But if I were to look up a dictionary and a thesaurus and dig in on the word mundane, would the word impermanence appear there at all? No, it wouldn't.
I'm not sure. Probably not.
Because the normative use of the word mundane is ordinary, dull. It is the de facto kind of dull gray aspects of reality, the ordinary. That's how mundane is normally used. But you seem to be wanting to even build something grandiose out of the ordinary and say a lot of words without saying anything of substance. What is it that your goal is? Because if all you're saying is you believe it's possible to end suffering, I don't care.
Yes.
I don't care what you believe. I care why you believe it and whether or not the rest of us should believe it. So if you can say all day that you think it's possible to eliminate suffering, or that it's not possible to eliminate suffering, but you need to demonstrate, A, what's the goal? Why should that be the goal? And why and how do you think that goal is attainable?
I think the goal is to eliminate ignorance about reality and, so to speak, mundane objects, right? Because mundane things are put together by smaller things, and they are impermanent. But perhaps you shouldn't.
No.
Go ahead.
I'm not just going to let you sit here and say the word mundane over and over as if you said something fucking relevant. You didn't. Mundane things are not just things that are put together by other things. Are you just typing into ChatGPT and having it spew forth whatever you find there? Because I would agree with you.
No,
let me finish.
Sure.
I would agree with you that I would like to eliminate ignorance. But eliminating ignorance is about education and increasing understanding about reality. There is no requirement of anything spiritual in order to eliminate ignorance. There's no requirement to talk about the mundane versus with its impermanence and what's fabricated in order to eliminate ignorance. You eliminate ignorance by gaining a more accurate understanding of the world and sharing that understanding. What understanding of the world do you have that is more accurate that you need to share with everybody else?
I mean, do you believe that it's possible to go beyond craving through knowledge alone? Because I believe that, it's one thing
David,
to have the knowledge. And I'm not saying
David,
that,
Okay, I'm muting you. I'm muting you just so we don't have to talk over it. I literally just asked you a question, and your response to that question was to ask me whether or not I believe it's possible to eliminate craving. How is your question in any way an answer to mine?
Can you repeat what your question was originally?
No, because if you're not going to pay attention to me doing all the work just so you can say mundane 3 more times, why should I do all the work? The question was, what information do you have that reduces ignorance that you feel the need to share, and how do you know it's reliable?
I believe that it's not possible to reduce ignorance through study alone. You have to truly internalize what you've studied through meditation and practice.
Prove it. I've never had to meditate.
Okay.
I've never, ever in my whole fucking life had to meditate, and I understand a great many things. I teach people a great many things. I've never had to meditate to understand it. Prove it.
But understanding something doesn't mean you've gone beyond suffering.
I didn't say, no, David, stop. Okay,
we
stop.
I'm
going to mute you again. I didn't say one fucking word. Not one about eliminating suffering. I talked about understanding. You asserted that you don't think you can understand without meditation. And I explained that I've never had to meditate and I understand a great many things. And when I asked you to prove it, you went into whether or not you can do it without eliminating suffering. Are you able to have a conversation on topic with us without deflecting to something irrelevant every time we put forward a question, or should we just end the call?
Okay, my bad. I mean, I would say that you don't actually understand something unless you're able to put it into practice.
So what?
So if you truly understand these principles, you should be beyond suffering, is what I'm trying to say. You should be beyond aversion and anger.
Why? Do you think that a doctor that understands and treats cancer is beyond suffering?
Okay, but that's not the...
That was a yes or no. That was a yes or no question, sir. Do you think that a doctor that truly understands...
No, he's not beyond suffering.
Then your assertion that understanding makes you beyond suffering is demonstrably false and refuted by your own words.
Understanding, like what understanding we're just talking about here is related to spiritual understanding in these topics, not, all understanding, even mundane understanding, right?
David, it sounds like you're taking some teachings. It sounds like you're taking like some teachings or wherever you've gotten this information from, and you're not even using the words properly. You're throwing around this word mundane, which you yourself said you needed to go back and look up. And it sounds like you're just, taking what you've heard and saying it over and over again, but there's not meaning behind it. You're not able to communicate that to us. It comes back as this very abstract, or you have to deflect and talk about something else. It's very confusing.
Sorry, it might just be because I'm quite, agitated right now and nervous because I don't really talk with people in these settings. So,
well, I appreciate
that's
you
probably the reason
talking. Sure, but I do think that this. Hopefully, this inspires you to go look and see, like, are you really even understanding these things that you're regurgitating? I understand that you may have found some things that are helping you personally, but to imply that these are things like you were doing on my Instagram that all people should follow, you're going to need to have an actual understanding of these things, not just putting them in practice, whatever it even is that you're putting into practice. It sounds like maybe meditation has been good for you. That's super cool. But you're not able to even verbalize why this is objectively better for every other person to do, because you can't even verbalize what it's doing.
I mean, I'm not sure what you mean by I can't even verbalize what it's doing.
I mean exactly what I said. What maybe we can narrow it down. What is the practice you're doing that you think everyone else should do because it's so much better than not doing it?
I think
that's what we've kind of
first you need to recognize.
Mm-hmm.
You need to recognize that, being something or obtaining things and, experiencing sense pleasures, those are impermanent. That's the foundation of the practice, right? Can you agree with that at least?
No, because again, you're using words like there's some buzzwords you've used multiple times now and last night as well, impermanence and mundane,
Sure.
and you're using them so differently each time that I'm not able to track with what you even mean by them. I don't even know if you know. It sounds very similar to my evangelical upbringing where they use these random words like God is pulling on your heart. It's like, what does that even mean? And I don't know that you even have an understanding or meaning. Maybe Matt is understanding what you're saying better than I am, but I'm not getting it.
I mean, impermanence means lasting for a finite amount of time, as in the pleasurable feelings you experience from a sense object, something you see, hear, smell, etc. It lasts for a finite amount of time, that pleasure.
Yes.
Does that make sense?
We know,
Yes.
I know what impermanence
We know what the
means.
main
I know
word
that
means.
things don't last forever. How is that relevant to
Okay.
this discussion?
Because if you become attached to something that is impermanent, once it ceases, what will be the result then? That's
Who knows? It depends on what it is.
For me.
So I was attached to my old car. It's no longer in existence, and I've moved on to a new car. What's the problem with that?
But did you not?
What's the problem with that? What's the problem with
if
that?
You don't,
what's the problem with that?
Were you truly attached to it?
I'm going to keep asking you the same question until you answer it. Okay. What's the problem with that?
It depends on if you were truly attached or not.
Oh, okay. So first we have this conversation about spirituality, which we can't define. Then you get to this notion that the understanding that we need to cultivate isn't limited to the mundane, but it's about the spiritual understanding. So we're right back at that again. And then you start talking about attachment. And when I present a case for attachment, which debunks your point, just as I've debunked every other gobbledygook thing you've tried to say, now it's a matter of, was I really attached to it? Name something that is that you think I've been attached to at some point in my life so that I don't have to answer the ridiculous question about whether or not I was attached to it. I was married to a woman for about 7 years. Do you think I was attached to her?
Perhaps.
Perhaps. Okay. Can you name anything that you think I was likely attached to so that you can stop wasting my fucking time with these distractions about whether or not I was actually attached?
Okay, sure.
Thank you.
Your own life.
Yes, I'm attached to my own life. And when it's over, it's over.
But are you bitter about that? Like, how do you actually
No, I'm not bitter about that. I'm not bitter about that because it won't impact me. There won't be a me anymore to experience what it's like to not exist. I am attached to my life in the same sense that I'm attached to breathing. And when the breathing stops, there won't be a me to object to it.
So you're saying that in the process of death, there won't be any aversion or any pushback against that. You would just accept whatever happens.
I have no idea, but there's nothing I can do about it. When I'm dead, I'm dead.
That seems like a even more pessimistic view than mine.
Well, I don't give a shit whether you think it's pessimistic. I'm trying to get to what you think is important and valuable. And you started bringing up attachments. So I started trying to give you examples of attachments to impermanence, things that are impermanent that I've been attached to, but none of them are good enough for you except for my life. So let me put it to you this way. Let's assume that I'm very attached to my life and it is impermanent. What do you understand that would help me deal with my attachment to my impermanent life?
I mean, assuming that you would suffer in the process of death, it might benefit you to practice, meditation or contemplation on
That's not what I asked you.
Of life.
That's not what I asked you. And this isn't about assuming I would suffer. You're claiming that you have a knowledge and understanding to assuage ignorance on spiritual issues where people are attached to things of impermanence. And I've asked you, let's assume that I am attached to my life. What knowledge do you have that you can share with me that will ease my suffering to being attached to my life?
First, you should make the mind calm and then contemplate the impermanence of life and truly understand it and reduce whatever aversion or whatever feelings you have towards it.
Why?
David, can I ask you a question?
Good.
Sure.
So, Dave, you're saying that the goal should be to reduce suffering, to not have suffering. I'm saying, I can't speak for Matt, I don't mind a little bit of suffering because oftentimes it ends up resulting in better things. And I understand that this is life, and part of being human means that I'm going to suffer sometimes, but I get to also enjoy all kinds of other things. So is my acceptance of suffering not as significant? To me, I think it's actually better to be like, you know what, sometimes there's going to be a little suffering, and that's okay. How is that not better than completely rejecting suffering and doing everything you can in life to avoid it?
I mean, I don't think you should be aversive to suffering or avoid it, because that is just the opposite.
But you started this whole thing off saying that the goal is to have no suffering. Why is that the goal? Why would I waste my time on trying to alleviate suffering when I can just acknowledge that it's part of life and deal with it and move forward and enjoy the things that I can?
I mean, in that sense, are you not already alleviating your own suffering? And over
cool,
time,
then I'm doing that. Then I'm
minuscule, right?
Then we agree.
Sure.
So then I don't need to change
fine,
anything. I don't need to meditate. I don't need to believe in an afterlife. I don't need to do any of these things that you've done. You were even saying yesterday that people shouldn't masturbate or have self-pleasure because that is going to increase the probability of them having, of them suffering.
Sure,
and we're just continuing to debunk that over and over and over again.
I mean, it truly depends on whether or not you are craving and suffering because of it. Like, if you are honestly sincere in, claiming that you don't suffer because of that, then I don't have an issue with it.
No. I'm not saying there's no suffering. I'm saying it's okay. Sometimes there's a little bit of suffering in life, and I am okay with it. I know that when I go on a hike the next day, I'm probably going to be suffering a little bit for it. And I'm okay with that because I get to enjoy an amazing hike. Does that make sense?
I mean, I think, yeah, that makes sense. But I mean, that seems like a defeatist attitude to have. Like, there's something
I don't
better,
really care.
But I'm just not willing
I don't care.
to...
I've accomplished what you're saying should be the ultimate thing to accomplish without having to put any effort into it. And I enjoy my life and I love it. So why do you have something better to offer me? It sounds like you don't.
I mean, there is something better, but if you're not willing to, put forth the effort to achieve it, I mean, I don't really have any issues with that, as long as you recognize that there is something better and not, convince people that, there isn't something better. Like, that's my biggest issue with, like, whatever content you're producing here. There is something better, right? And as long as you can acknowledge that.
What's better?
What's better?
The complete cessation of suffering. Is that not better? And
better than what? First of all, better than what?
Better
and how
than
do you
still
prove
having
it?
suffering.
Better than what? And how do you prove it?
Desires.
How do you prove it?
The state you're in right
how
now.
do you fucking prove it?
I mean, do you agree that there's a way to
how
have
do you
no
fucking
aversion
prove
or anger
it?
at all?
How do you prove it?
Okay.
How do you prove it?
This, then.
How do you prove it?
Okay.
I'm going to keep asking you the same fucking question, David, to expose your problem until you actually answer it. If you want to assert that we are wrong and you have a better way, you have to prove it. And that means you need to come up with a method to prove it. Can you do that or not? Can you do that?
I'm not making a moral judgment,
David? Okay, David, I'm just going to fucking mute you. And you're going to try this again. If you're going to assert that there's something wrong with what we're advocating for, which, by the way, all we're advocating for is skepticism and humanism. That's it. And if you're going to say that there's something better, I'm going to ask you to prove it. And when you want to prove it, that means you have to come up with a method to show that what you believe is better is demonstrably better. I don't know why that's so difficult for you to understand, but I'm going to unmute you now. Can you prove that you have a better way? Or is this just your opinion?
Can I ask you a question then?
No,
begin
you
to answer
answer
that.
my question, and if you answer my question, then I'll let you ask a question. And if you don't answer my question, you're fucking done.
Okay, so there are explicit fetters that bind people to suffering.
Okay, I'm going to try this one more time. I'm going to mute you, and then when I unmute you, I'm going to have you answer the question. And if you can answer the question, then I'll let you answer a question. I'll let you ask a question. And if you don't answer my question, I'm going to drop you like a bad habit. When you say that you have a better way, when you don't even understand what our way is, and you barely understand your way enough to put it into words that make a coherent sentence, my question is, what is your method to prove that your better way is actually better and not just your opinion? Go.
So the premise is that no suffering is better than even a little bit of suffering. And
All right, I'm going to mute you, and I'm going to try this again. I don't need you to restate your premise. You need to hem and haw. I don't need you to try to redefine things that you clearly don't understand. I'm going to ask you this, and this is the very last time I'm going to ask you. Do you have a way to demonstrate that what you claim, which is that you have a better way, is actually true and better, or is this just your opinion? Which of those is the case?
I do think there is a way to demonstrate it if you would allow me to ask you a question.
I don't believe you, David, and I think that I'm going to go ahead because you just said that you think there's a way, but you need to ask me a question. So I'm going to let you ask this question, and if the question you ask does not expressly lead to a methodology to demonstrate that your claim is better and true, I will ban you from this show. Do you still want to ask me a question, or do you want to try and answer the other one?
I'm not sure.
David, I think clearly you don't have a way to demonstrate this. And that's fine. You can just be honest and say, yeah, I can't demonstrate that. Right now, it's my opinion. Go back, sit down. It feels like you're really following a script. Come up with, you should be able to use words other than impermanence, mundane. Like, you should be able to describe this. If it's truth and you have evidence for it, you should have many different ways to talk about it and describe it and communicate it to us. So maybe you need to go back, reflect on what you believe, why you believe it, and see if you even still agree with it. Because the more we're unpacking this, the less you're having the ability to demonstrate anything for us. If you have to ask us questions to demonstrate something, that's not really helpful. Because what are you going to do? How are you going to prove this to anybody?
There's absolutely nothing about, and there's no question you could ask me that has any bearing on whether or not you have a sound methodology to demonstrate the truth of your position. When somebody says, Matt, what is your methodology to determine truth? I don't ever have to ask them a question because their thoughts are irrelevant to my methodology to discerning truth. So I will let you ask a question if you want to roll those dice, or you can present your methodology for determining truth, or you can take a break.
I mean, the best way to explain it, like the methodology, would be, reducing qualities like anger and sensual desire that create stress, right? But if we're not able to come to a conclusion that these qualities are undesirable, then I'm not sure, I need to go back and contemplate more on that. But if we are able to agree that there are unwholesome qualities, and that by removing these slowly but surely, you will achieve a higher state of happiness, then
Nope,
I
David,
guess
you're
we
done.
can continue.
Nope,
Okay.
we're done. This is absolute nonsense. What you described is not a methodology. It was an assertion. You're asserting that reducing qualities like anger and central desire, which create stress, is a good thing. You're asserting that there are unwholesome qualities without demonstrating what they are or why they are. And none of that has anything to do with a methodology to demonstrate truth. It's like you don't even have a clue what truth is. Thanks for calling.
Yeah, I think it really sounds like a script. It sounds like somebody who doesn't even fully understand, like they found a coping mechanism or they found a tool that helps them in life, and that's cool. And they're so overzealous about it that they want to assert it on others without even understanding what they're talking about.
It's a little unfair, especially now that he's no longer on the line. But I understand why people say things like, oh, we need to reduce anger and central desire. Well, I don't know what central desire is, but if I hear a story, so for example, someone I debated once was advocating for marrying and consummating marriages with 4-year-olds. If that doesn't make you angry, something is wrong. And that anger is absolutely righteous and productive. It is what stops you from being just like, yeah, that's their culture. It's a-okay. That anger is essential to stopping actual harm to children. So you can't simplify things to just anger bad. I mean, we don't live in the Hulk smash mentality world, and we absolutely shouldn't. And if you have concepts about what you'd like to achieve, like, hey, we should reduce suffering, cool. But does that mean we should reduce all suffering? Should we make it so that nobody ever feels anything remotely bad? Because I can tell you that as bad as a broken heart is, it can lead to better things and better lives. And it's how you find out that maybe what you expected out of a relationship was wrong, and you'd expect and deserve more. You deserve better. And so it's like people like David just want to go straight to an ideal. Like, but if you just think about it and meditate, we can just eliminate it and be exact,
it's very binary and religious. And even this whole idea of not having any attachments. I remember going down that road for like 2 weeks one time and realizing, well, then you can't experience joy or all of the ups of life. Like, sure, okay, no downs, but I have a dog that died. Sure, if I was not attached to that dog, I would have had less suffering when that dog died. I wouldn't trade those years with that dog and the joy for anything. That was worth the suffering. It's just, that is such a binary, low level way of thinking. And it makes me sad because I do think ultimately it's going to keep you from experiencing some of the good things in life.
And a lot of what people end up talking about is, oh, it's the death of the self, and it's the death of the passions, and it's the death of desires. And I'm like, that's life. Do you know how boring it's like when people talk about heaven? Do you know how boring heaven sounds?
Awful.
That you're going to forever just sit there and praise forever. Like, even if my favorite meal I ever had was at a restaurant in Turkey when I was in the Navy. We stopped in Antalya, Turkey. I've talked about it before. We went in, we walked up to this place. They walked us through the restaurant out to a back patio at a big picnic table. We didn't even order anything. They just brought out mountains of food, and it was the best meal I've ever had. But if I had that same meal every single day for 30 years, I would be absolutely sick to death of it. It is the variety that is the spice of life, and that includes some things that count as suffering. That's where growth is. So when he says that you're never going to truly understand something until you meditate on it or until you can put it into practice, I don't see that either of those are necessarily true. But for some things, the best understanding comes from actually living through it. You don't have to burn your hand on this stove to the point where you are scarred to have a good understanding of it. But if you feel the slightest bit of pain from there and can then extrapolate out there,
Mhm.
you can have a really good understanding. Are you going to know exactly what
Right.
it's like to have third-degree burns on your hand? No. And you should be thankful that you didn't need to go quite that far. But just telling
Mhm.
me about heat and how it impacts skin, and then telling me to sit around and meditate about that and I'll gain an understanding, I don't think that leads to an understanding either.
Right. Ugh,
All right.
yeah.
We got more callers and more theists and atheists and everything else. So let's just keep going because
Awesome.
David took some time, and we have Pony in California. May or may not be a theist or atheist. We're not sure. Pruns or he, him.
All right.
Welcome. You are on Pony with Matt and Eve.
Hello, folks. How are you today?
Hi, Pony. Thanks
Exhausted,
for calling.
but feeling all right.
Thank you for taking my call. It's my first time talking with you guys, so I hope my suppositions don't annoy you too much.
Oh,
Here's
I hope
my
they annoy the
question for
crap
you.
out of me, actually, but that's just because I need
We'll
it.
find out.
Don't worry, Ma. I will never contact you unsolicited. Don't worry. Here's my question for you. And first, a slight preface. I come from this perspective as somebody who has a reasonable idea of how I am going to die. I'm living with advanced AIDS, tuberculosis, and Alzheimer's. So take your pick. I have a pretty good idea. So I've been confronting the idea of what'll happen when it's all over, among other things.
Mm.
So here's my question. As I have approached this, I've become more calm and begun to see a lot more gray shades in life. I was never particularly black and white, but I was raised in the church, the Christian Protestant church, up until I was 14 when I started questioning, and I started looking at other spiritual life ways, none of which I particularly bought into. I just wanted to learn more. And as humankind has developed technically in the last since the beginning of the Industrial Revolution, we've learned so much more about the other life ways of people around the world that before we didn't have access to because of communications. We have realized that they all have their spiritual beliefs, and none of them have the answer, quote, capital V, capital answer. None of them do. But we're also seeing, according to statistics of the last 10 years, 15 years, that more and more people are moving away from religion and toward, if not reason, then at least a non-religious point of view. And my question is, do you think it's possible, and this is what I wanted to debate or discuss with you, is it possible that this is an evolutionary effect? Could we be evolving away from the need for spiritual questing as we become more and more scientifically literate? Which leads me to wonder, is it possible that we actually were genetically built to have a sense of spirituality to separate us from the other primates in leading us towards a better path until we could develop the systems that allowed us to move beyond religion? That's my question for you.
All right. Eve, do you want to start, or you want me to
I mean,
start?
my initial comment is just that I would think it would be a symptom of the evolutionary process. It's something that comes because of that, not caused by it. And as to the other, I don't think that we were genetically designed or programmed. So I'll let Matt take it from there.
Yeah,
Thank
so
you.
first of all, Pony, thank you for calling, and just having somebody call in and say, hey, I'm dealing with AIDS, tuberculosis, and Alzheimer's, but I had this really interesting question. I'm just like, wow, all the things to focus, and it reminds me of my friend Dave, who's
Yeah.
dying of ALS. But
Yeah.
so here's the thing: either the religious claims are true in somehow or another, or they're not. If they are true, then this isn't an evolutionary thing at all. It's just, this is the way it is. If it's not true, then the question becomes, why do we believe these things? And I think that the best explanation is that it is errors in thinking that provide some advantage, whether it's building communities or comforting, making you less uncomfortable with not knowing the answers to things, stuff like that. But you said two things that I definitely have issue with. One is that maybe there was a genetic design, but that's not the way evolution works. There's like no design, no intention, no nothing. So if anything, it'd just be a side effect to some other advantage. And essentially evolution is selecting against things as much or more than selecting for, although Forrest and Erika may beat me up for phrasing it that way. But the other thing is that you said that maybe this is what separated us from the other primates. I don't know how anybody could reach that conclusion, because I don't know how we show that the other primates don't
Right.
have some sort of similar religious thinking or flaws in their thinking or anything like that.
Well, what I meant by separating us from the primates is that, according to what information I've encountered, and again, I could be wrong, because my philosophy in life has become, I don't know. But what information I've encountered leads us to believe that the other primates cannot imagine a future. They cannot communicate in semi-permanent ways. In other words, they can't write things down that people 1,000 years from now can read and learn from. They can't imagine a future, and they cannot necessarily build tools to create what they imagine.
No. The notion that they can't imagine a future, I think, is already demonstrably false, and that they can't use tools is already demonstrably false, because, I mean, crows are really good with with tools, but other primates have shown that they understand incredibly difficult concepts like fairness. Like, we've done experiments where if you're giving two primates in a cage, one of them you're feeding a reward of seeds, and you're giving that same reward to both of them. They're both perfectly happy until you change one of them to get berries. And then when the one who's been getting seeds and nuts instead of the berries sees the other one getting berries, all of a sudden they will lose their mind at this notion that there isn't fairness. So concepts like fairness and stuff exist within the other primates, and not just other primates. I mean, dolphins and there are different animals with different cognitive abilities. I don't know how somebody can say, oh, well, they can't have anything like religion just because they don't have a written symbol for or written process for communication. I don't think that's a requirement. I think it's a cognitive thing.
Well, okay, now here's my question on that. You say you don't see how they could have a religion. To me, a religion is an intellectual construct. Could they more be reacting to a sense of spirituality?
I don't know, because I don't know what spirituality is. I keep asking every time somebody mentions it, and I never get an answer that is anything close to an actual definition of what they mean by spirituality. It seems to mean virtually anything to anybody. And so maybe you could say they definitely have some sense of spirituality, as long as we're going to define it that loosely.
Well, my simple definition, and I'm not going to try to convince you to believe it because it's just my own definition of spirituality, is simply a deep instinctive feeling that there's something greater than we that we might somehow communicate with on a non-direct, non-verbal language level. Beyond that, I ain't got no idea.
So your notion of spirituality is the belief that there's something that we communicate with on a non-verbal level?
That we might communicate with if we choose to, and if whatever it is chooses to communicate with us.
How can we have a spirituality that's based on mights and maybes?
Well, again, for me, I don't know. And I'll be the first person. I could be totally wrong on this. Here's my thought. What if what we consider as might be gods were really just advanced beings from another world, and we were too stupid to realize that that's what they were? What if they had the ability to telepathically communicate with us, and we simply don't understand what it is? I will be the first person to say, I don't believe in the idea of the Abrahamic God. I went away from that a long time ago. So there you are on that. But I do firmly believe that we are not alone in this universe. There's got to be beings on other worlds.
You say firmly. What do you base that firm belief in?
You mean the firmly about believing that there are beings on other possible beings around the universe?
It was what you said right before that. That you believe in, I guess, some being that can communicate, or something that can communicate with us in general. What do you firmly base that belief in?
The Drake equation.
The what?
But the Drake equation
Drake
doesn't say
equation.
anything at
Drake
all
equation.
about whether or not there are beings other than us that can communicate with us.
Could you repeat that? You broke up.
The Drake equation doesn't say anything at all about whether there are beings other than us who could communicate with us.
No, it does not. You're correct. Now, here's my feeling about the possibility of communication. Let me ask you this. Have you ever met somebody and after 3 minutes you'd swear you've known them forever? Or have you ever been in a relationship with someone where somehow you just know that they need you to call them and you do and they say, I was just thinking about you? I think that there is a practical reason for that. And what I think it is essentially simply a mild form of radio communication between the nervous systems. Our nervous systems are electrically operated. Oh, our nervous systems are electrically operated. When you send an electrical signal through a wire, it will create a very minute magnetic field. Imagine the brain as the transmitter and the spinal column as the antenna. We do have an actual form of vibrational frequency. People operate on different frequencies.
What is the rate that that magnetic? What is the rate that falls off at? Like electricity running through the wire. Electricity running through the wire on my desk. What is the furthest distance from that wire that it can be detected?
Probably a few inches, depending upon the amount of power.
Okay. And
it cycles per second.
What about the electrochemical energy in my brain? How much weaker is that than the power going through this cable on my desk?
Well, that's a very good question, and it's considerably weaker. Neuroscientists have measured it, but I don't know those numbers. All I can tell you is
let's say that the cable that is streaming this video from my room to my producer's room at the end of the hall. At what distance from that cable could anybody read that signal and figure out what's being transmitted? Setting aside encryption.
Again, probably just a few inches, depending upon the instrumentation and the frequency.
I'm not convinced that it can be done at any distance, because that's not. But okay, so the notion that
have you ever had your car timing tested? If you've ever seen that large claw device that they wrap around the cables, that can be a few inches out, and they can still detect the spark coming through your spark plug wires.
Okay.
Same thing with an induction detector in the street.
There's a difference between measuring a difference in a voltage spike and determining the content of the particular signal that's going through there. But in any case, the fact that our brains operate electrochemically, and so does my computer, doesn't in any way mean that there is some being that can communicate that way, or the notion that, hey, I just felt like somebody needed to call me means that I picked up on their brainwaves. That's patently absurd. How would you ever demonstrate that that's the case? How would you rule out coincidence? How would you rule out all of the other things that go into this to say, maybe we're communicating essentially telepathically with people? Because every time that's been tested, it has failed.
You're right.
So wouldn't the time to believe,
I can't debate you on that, because you're right.
Wouldn't the time to believe that it's true be after we demonstrate that it's true, and not just when we speculate on a bong hit that it's possible?
My bong is broken.
My bong is broken too. But the point is here.
You're quite right.
It's really easy. It's really easy to say, this thing could be viewed in a way that's similar to this other thing. I wonder if we could extrapolate to this, and then maybe that explains this. And there's all kinds of weirdness. When you say something like, hey, have you ever had that feeling like somebody really needed you to reach out to them, and you do, and that this might actually be a demonstration of communicating in a non-traditional way, whether you call it telepathic or whatever else, when you go down that route, it is functionally, logically identical to people saying, God answers prayer.
Interesting.
Except it's actually weaker because at least the God definition typically suggests that God could answer prayer and that God does know your thoughts. There's no demonstration that no matter how close Eve and I are sitting to each other, we could press our foreheads together in the same room and absolutely never be able to demonstrate any sort of communication of a concept. And so to say, oh, what if it's this? That's interesting. To me, the time to believe it is after it's been demonstrated. And the fact that we've
Right.
repeatedly tried to demonstrate it and haven't means that not only do we not yet have good reason to believe it, but we may in fact have reason to disbelieve it, to actively disbelieve it.
Do you think it's possible we might ever develop instrumentation that could measure the existence of a possibility of a soul?
I don't think that there's any possibility of a soul, but I
Right.
can't completely rule it out. I think the soul is the most obviously dead concept in all of philosophy and theology, because every single characteristic we've ever attributed to a soul that can be identified as a real thing is a function of a brain, and your brain dies. My preferences, my likes, my desires, my thoughts, my memories, my hopes, my fears, my dreams, all of those things are functional aspects of a brain. And when the brain dies, how does that work with a soul? If let's say we've severed, for example, the corpus callosum in people, and then ended up with two individuals in the same brain who communicate independently. In some cases, one of them is a theist and one of them is an atheist, because one side of your brain has access to your vocal communication and the other one could write. And so there's a great case that V.S. Ramachandran's talked about like that. But in any case, if there's a soul and I have brain damage and it fundamentally changes who I am and what I like, does that mean there's a soul trapped in my body that's not able to communicate and I'm just like a homunculus? And if that's the case, when my body commits sins and wrongs, does that get sent taxed to the soul? And is the soul just in there going, oh my gosh, I can't stop this body? And if it is, then the fact that there's a body that can act and do things exactly as if it was a soul steering demonstrates the soul is irrelevant to human interaction.
Yes, this is true, but this also assumes that the soul is a personality. What if the soul is not that? What if the soul is merely that spark of life that simply differentiates us from rocks? What if it is just that spark without a personality?
Who says that's a spark or a thing? All you're doing is comparing a rock, which is an inanimate non-agent, to an animate agent. And the difference there, while we're alive, appears to be electrical chemical energy coursing through us. But it's not a spark of something special.
Well, you make great points. Thank you. I appreciate your clarity on that.
Okay. I mean, if somebody demonstrates that there's something worth calling a soul, I'm fine with that. I'm pretty sure if we invent a transporter that we'll figure it out pretty quick. Well, Star Trek transporters are suicide machines, but
yeah, exactly. And by the way, I'm the one who did the visual effects of the transporters on the fan shows for Star Trek, so I'm in charge of the beam.
Cool.
Let me just conclude with one thing, because I don't want to take the time away from the other callers. This is just a little quick story. My aunt died of lung cancer quite a few years ago, and all her life she was a person of reason and intelligence and science. And in the last couple of months, as she was dying, the Christians got to her, and she started spouting Jesus stuff. And I can tell you, I'm so glad that I went through the church existence, which she never did, because I learned what that was about. I learned the medicine show that was about a long time ago, and I like to think that I'm looking towards my death with a lot more clarity and a lot less fear than I might have had 20 or 30 years ago.
I really appreciate that, Pony. Let me just say this. First of all, I mean, I appreciate the fact that we could have an interesting conversation, and is there a soul, and can we communicate outside of, our typical ways, and where are we with regard to primates, all of that stuff. As I've learned from Dave and from other people, and in your situation, you're dealing with multiple vectors that are going to devastate your life and the lives of the people who love you moving forward, because you're dealing not only with AIDS and tuberculosis, but Alzheimer's. It is probably, to whatever extent I have fears about death and dying, your situation is one that I am most fearful of, even though I know it's going to be harder in some ways on the people that love me if I were to go down that particular path than it might be on me. I appreciate you calling in and talking about it. And I think that it's nice that even though you think you've escaped the religious, who knows what could happen to you? You could change your mind about religious stuff tomorrow, or in a week, or in a year, or in a confused state of dementia somewhere down the road, or whatever else. For now, I just want to applaud you for just being matter of fact and sensible, and this is the way it is, and let me keep thinking, and let me keep trying to explore aspects of life to find out, what should I think about things, because there are other people in similar situations that would not be wasting time, and wasting I'm using in a very specific sense, on a conversation like this, because there are things that they might consider more important. I love the fact that you're doing all of it.
Well, thank you so much. And the reason that I like conversations like this is because I like to think about thinking.
Me too.
You folks take care. Cheers.
Thanks so much,
Pony.
Pony. That was a nice
So,
call.
I have already, Arden knows, we've talked about stuff like this, especially, and I've talked about it with Dave. And I have other friends who have, end of life issues. I have a friend of mine who was terminally ill and in massive pain, and did manage to end his life on his own terms. I'm a proponent of death with dignity. And there are certain scenarios where, like, if my mind goes to where I'm not aware
Right.
of what's going on and everything else, I know that I won't be suffering anymore, because I won't be here.
Right.
This notion that there's, I've talked about it before, that my mom will not be in heaven, because in heaven there can be no suffering. And if I'm not there, and if I'm in hell, then my mom would have to be suffering. And so if she ends up in heaven, whoever that is isn't her. It's a facsimile of her. And it's the same thing when we're talking about, people going through dementia, Alzheimer's, things like that, where there's fundamental change to their identity, their memories, all those things.
Right.
I won't be suffering, but the people around me who care about me will be.
Yeah.
And that bugs me. Like, if the fact that I'm going to die is mildly irritating, but everybody's
Are you
gonna
attached
die.
to your life, Matt?
I am attached to my life, but I realize that when I'm dead, there's no reason to think that I'm going to suffer. And so
Right.
it's just mildly irritating. But the fact that the end of my life could be traumatic and painful for the people I love hurts me now. It won't hurt me then,
Yeah.
because I'll be oblivious.
Sure.
But it hurts me now. And that is, to get back to David, that is the suffering that is great. Because that suffering that I experience now about a possible but not inevitable future allows me to take steps now to make sure that I've minimized the harm and damage as best I can,
Right.
if that were to happen. And,
Yep.
all this, let's end suffering and let's die unto the self. And no, you need
Right.
you need some of that. But anyway,
Yeah, it's just more religious denial and delusion to try to cope. And turns out just living and experiencing life is significantly better cope.
well, we got another theist who's called in and waited for quite a long time. I appreciate that.
Right.
Tom in New York, pronouns are he, him, would like to share what made him believe in God and the origin of the universe. So, Tom, you are on with Eve and Matt.
Yeah, sure thing. Hey guys, how's everything going? I'm actually Matt. I actually used to listen to your show way back in the day. I mean, I'm talking like 10 plus years when I was, I think, in college, and I was really diving
I'm glad you
deep
didn't
into
say grade
apologetics.
school.
Oh, I mean that probably would have
I've
aged
literally
one of us.
been I've literally been at events because I've been hosting shows for 19 years. I've literally been at events where, you know, we're all standing around at a bar drinking and some 21-year-old will just say something like, "Man, I've been listening to you for my whole life." And I was like, "Why you fuckers want to make me feel so old?" But thanks, Tom.
Yeah, no worries at all. And I actually had completely, I guess it had kind of apologetics, just in general, had kind of fallen off the radar for me for a long time, and it's only just very recently because of one of Eve's posts that I actually, am back, and I actually didn't realize that you were still doing what you do. So, yeah, I guess Eve, great efforts on your marketing there for promoting the show.
Yay.
Thank you.
But just a little bit about me. I grew up in the church. Grew up, I guess, Pentecostal, and then maybe when I was junior year of college, I was really kind of thinking through what faith meant to me, and I wanted for this religion aspect of my life to be my own thing rather than something that I would adopt as just a byproduct of my family or my culture or the community I was in. And so I really kind of dug deep into why I believed what I believed. And then after kind of solidifying just at least cerebrally like what faith meant, I also had a chance to kind of dig into a little bit of the supernatural. I had the opportunity to attend a church on the West Coast called Bethel Church. You may or may not have heard of that church. And that was home for me for maybe 4 years. And I think I've been able to appreciate a good balance of the faith between, a lot of what you hear about in terms of healings and miracles, and I kind of like getting an understanding of that, and then also thinking through this logically. And so I think for me, ultimately, why I've come to believe in God and kind of have that foundation is really comes down to, at least one part of it is a little bit of the cosmological argument, right? Is like even beyond looking at specifically, the Christian religion or the Bible, etc. I like to look at it a little more holistically and say, you know what? The very fact that we or any of us or any physical element exists kind of makes me think that there was some consciousness at some point in time that caused the universe to come into being. I guess I'm not here to necessarily debate you on this, but kind of just to share my perspective on why I feel convinced that there is an all-powerful, or at least a first cause that we attribute to as God.
This took a slightly different turn because you were talking about how you had some interaction with or confirmation of the spiritual, and then you went to you're convinced because of the Kalam cosmological argument. And so for those who aren't aware, the Kalam cosmological argument is everything that begins to exist has a cause for its existence. The universe began to exist, therefore the universe has a cause for its existence. And that's the end. And then everything else is something in addition to that. So while I'd love to dig in on what you meant by the supernatural or how you confirmed anything supernatural, as I'm not aware of anyone ever being able to confirm anything supernatural in the entire history of the universe.
All right.
What about the Kalam makes you think that there's a God, let alone a personal being that cares and interacts? That's not what the Kalam says.
or even an all-powerful
Sure.
one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, and that makes sense. From my perspective, when I look at a first cause, or at least within the framework of the Kalam argument, right, is that it would necessitate that this cause is, when I say all powerful, I mean it in the sense that it had to have the ability or capacity to be able to create, or at least spark what we know to be the Big Bang that brought the universe into being, right? So I say all powerful in that sense, not necessarily in the personal relationship sense.
Let's just throw out all powerful because we don't need it. Under your definition,
sure.
All you're saying is that whatever started the universe had to be capable of starting the universe.
Right.
Correct. Yep. And then also in terms of
how do we know?
Oh, go ahead.
How do we know what's capable of starting the universe, and how do we know that whatever is capable of starting the universe is necessarily a sentient being with a purpose?
Sure. And I think this is where, so I think the fact that it took place at a certain point in time, to me, shows a level of intentionality, right? Because if at some point the universe came into being at a certain time, so to speak, then it, at least in my mind, it goes to show, or at least I feel like it's necessary that this cause, or whatever it was, right, it needed to have that decision made in order.
Why couldn't it have been an accident?
To cause that.
I should have shut up because even I literally said why at the exact same time. So
yeah, why couldn't it have been an accident?
The accident isn't a cause. The accident simply describes the cause. So when you say, why can't it be an accident, that's actually not a cause. That's just describing how it came about, like whether it was on purpose or accident, you know? So
but you just said it was
I don't
intentional.
think that really.
Why does it have to be intentional?
You said that the timing suggests it was intentional, and we are both saying, why is it that the timing suggests it was intentional? How did you rule out the possibility of, at whatever time Big Bang cosmology begins, which we can't fully explore, how did you rule out that this wasn't just a non-intentional result of a multiverse?
Because of the fact that we came into existence at a certain point in time. Now, if the universe had always existed,
Tom,
that's not an answer.
Yeah. So let's imagine a universe that is the result of a multiversal unintentional beginning and a universe that is the result of an intentional beginning. Don't both of those come into being at a certain time?
Now, if you're going to posit the idea of an unintentional cause for the universe, explain to me what that is.
No. I asked a specific question.
Yeah.
I'm comparing two things. A universe that is the result of an unintentional cause and your universe proposal that it's the result of an intentional cause. And you said that you could tell it was the result of an intentional cause because we came into existence at a specific time. And all I asked is, under both of those models, doesn't the universe come into existence at a specific time?
Now you're making, like, in this framework that you're putting together.
It's literally
this is a yes or no.
It is literally a yes or no question, and it exposes the flaw in your reasoning, which is why you're not answering it, even if you're not aware of that. Because the fact of the matter is, any universe that comes into being at some time, correct?
Correct.
And a universe that comes into being through intentional design comes in at a certain time, and a universe that comes into being without intentional design comes into being at a certain time, right?
that I cannot give you that. And the
Oh my
reason is
God,
because
Tom, this is so absolutely dishonest. You already said yes.
Yeah.
Every universe that comes,
wait.
shut up. Every universe that comes into being at a time. The origin of the universe at T0 is a fact, irrespective of the cause. That's the point I'm trying to get to. You are so eager to assert that because of the timing, it must have been intentional, which is fallacious by your own admission. But when we take that one extra step to compare your model to a competing model, all of a sudden it breaks down. Every universe that begins to exist at some time. What is it about the time that ours began that leads you to the conclusion it's intentional, as opposed to some other time that it might have began not being intentional?
And the reason is because you posit this model, correct? So,
I'm going to mute you. At no point does us positing any model have anything to do with the answer to this. I'm going to make this as simple as possible because people are mocking you in chat, and I'd rather not have that happen. Any proposed universe that comes into existence, whether it comes into existence by a god starting it at time 0 or by a multiverse starting it at time 0, comes into existence at time 0. You are saying that because of the time that the universe began, that signals intention. And we are asking you, how can it possibly signal intention when every possible universe that comes into being would start at time 0? What is it about the time that leads you to conclude that it must be intentional as opposed to unintentional? That's the question. Of course, you can just sit there quiet.
Oh, sorry. I heard a beep, so I thought I was offline. I think for me, the reason is because, sure, the universe comes into being at t equals 0, right? I think the very fact that there is a t equals 0 shows that there is intentionality. And so I'm framing this just from what we can understand in our own day-to-day lives, right? Like, let's say
how does that show intentionality?
A guitar.
But how does that show intentionality?
Sure. So let me explain. So let's say I want to build a musical instrument, take a guitar, right? At one point in time, the guitar did not exist, right? At another point in time, the guitar began to exist. And so just from our own experience on a day-to-day basis, how we've come to understand things that are in existence, I think it's reasonable for us to conclude that if something has now come into existence, that there must be, and at a certain point in time, that there must be some intentionality behind it. Now,
No. First of all, guitars don't come into existence. The matter for the guitar already exists. It's the result in a change of patterns. But let's pick something that, like a fire. If I intentionally start a fire, or if fire happens through natural processes, don't they both start at some time?
that is correct.
Now,
one can be intentional and one unintentional.
Is the time that the fire starts in any way an indicator as to whether or not that fire was intentionally set or whether or not it occurred naturally?
I think how you're trying to compare the fire with the creation
You're
of the
using
universe
your comparison. You're the one that just brought up the
insanely
guitar.
dishonest. This is insanely fucking dishonest, Tom. Is the time that the fire starts an indicator of whether the fire was set intentionally or happened naturally? Yes or no? The answer is fucking no, and you know it.
But let's say.
The answer is no, and you know it. The answer is no, and you know it, correct?
Not necessarily.
The answer is no, and you fucking know it. How does let's say there's two fires, and they both started at 4:52 p.m. Which one was set
Mhm.
intentionally?
It could be either.
Correct, which is what I've asked you 4 fucking times now, Tom. The time on its own is not sufficient to determine if the fire was set intentionally or naturally, correct?
That is correct, but there's a difference.
Correct.
That you're
Now,
missing.
no, there's not. I asked you this repeatedly and did everything in my power to give you the easiest way to stop looking stupid about this. The time that something happens is not on its own an indicator of how it happened, is it?
But there's a difference because when
Is
creation, when the universe,
Is it you?
But when the
Oh my
universe-
God, Tom, you are so fucking dishonest. The time
No,
that something begins, the time that something begins is not on its own sufficient to determine the cause, is it?
but I really don't think that's a fair
Is it?
comparison. Because
Is it
Like-
oh my God, dissemble one more time and I will fucking hang up on you. The time that something begins on its own is not sufficient to determine what the cause was, is it?
when the universe came into
Goodbye, you
Yeah,
absolutely
just answer the
dishonest liar. You can say that there are things about the origin of the universe that might suggest it was intentional, but not the fact that it began at a certain time. This is so simple and obvious. And I did it with an example, the fire, but you wanted to go with the guitar. Because why? Guitars don't occur naturally, do they? Everything we see that comes into being is the result of intention. No, it's not. And I demonstrated that. Fire isn't the result of conscious agency in many cases. I hung up on you already, so we can move on. But the fact of the matter is, the time that something happens is not in any way an indicator of how or why it happened. You need additional information to do that. And if you had any additional information, you could present it. But you were so desperate. Well, no, the universe is different. The universal origin is different. That's called special pleading. It's a fallacy. Everything about your view, Tom, is fallacious, and you can't argue honestly about it. It is so frustrating to be sitting here saying, hey, I'd love to have a good conversation with you, but it's not possible because you won't be honest. This kills me.
That's infuriating.
This is
We
easy.
even could have kept the conversation going. If he's showing honesty, then move on to another point. Like surely you've got some other reasons, but the inability to be honest when a question is presented to you, it's yes or no, and obviously he knows the answer, and you're refusing to answer it because you have to cling to this dogma. I mean, they're doing our work for us when apologists cling to stuff like this. As soon as he said that he dabbled in apologetics, and then I was like, well, this is going to be an interesting
I can't
call.
take him seriously. Here's the thing.
Right.
One of the reasons people are like, why you get so angry, Matt? Why you get so upset? I'll tell you why. Because either Tom is confused, dishonest, or incredibly dishonest. Because Tom is a terrible representative of sound or even close to reasonable theistic judgment and justification. Tom can't even answer simple, basic questions about causality, setting aside the origin of the universe, honestly.
Right.
Because somewhere in his noggin, he knows that it's going to expose the flaw in his thinking. Now, is he afraid of it because he's a liar who's trying to mock Christians? Is he an atheist? Because this has happened in the 19 years or so I've done this. Atheists will call into the show and pretend to be a theist and make the dumbest arguments in order to make theists look stupid. Well, I'm sorry, they don't need any help from you guys to do this. There are plenty of sincere believers who are very confused, and there are other sincere believers who I guarantee you if Than had called in with an argument from the Kalam cosmological argument, and I would have said, hey, look, I just had a conversation with this theist who said that because the universe started at T0, that on its own is sufficient to conclude that it was an intentional process by an agent. I would bet every dollar in my pocket that Than would say, that's ridiculous. Why would anybody think that the mere time of this? And if I said, I even went to a fire started, it was either intentional or not. It started at 4:52. Does that time tell you whether he'd been like, of course not. And how is that different from the universe? It's not. It's not the way causality works. You don't get to make a new special type of causality for the origin of the universe. It's absolutely bizarre. I'm not going to let you make theists look so stupid. I want people to actually, I don't need a cartoon. I don't need somebody, calling in to pretend. All right.
Yeah.
Let's try this again.
Just answer yes or no questions, you guys. Then we can keep the conversation going.
So Patrick's calling. Patrick's a theist from South Carolina. Pronouns are he, him. Patrick, how are you? You are on with Eve and Matt.
Hey, Matt. Hey, Eve.
Hi.
I've called before. I'm deconstructing, and I was just trying to figure out what is the I'm trying to figure out where to start with research on the history of the Bible.
The history of the Bible?
So you grew up as a Christian?
Yeah, but I'd never really I didn't I've always, for example, I've only known things that I have never really read the Bible myself, and most of what I knew was from my family members saying what it said, but not really reading it for myself. I've started reading it a little bit now.
Yeah.
I've watched this show for a couple months now, and some other atheist channels, and I found out God is not really the person I thought he was.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think so for me, part of my questioning was I was setting out I wanted to be able to win over my friends who weren't Christians or who practice other religions. So I kind of set out to prove that there is a God. I wasn't sitting there trying to disprove Christianity, because in that case, why was I also not going and setting out to disprove the Quran and all of these other things? So I would advise that you, it sounds like you're already far enough in your process. I would head over to Recovering from Religion and check out some of their resources, because I think you might end up wasting a lot of your time sitting there trying to read the Bible, especially if you already haven't shown interest. Are you saying that you're wanting to be okay with the conclusion that there isn't the Christian God or God in general? I'm a little unclear on exactly where you're at right now in this process.
Okay. Yeah, I'm a Christian, but and I've called the atheist experience the line multiple times. I'm to the point where I'm basically almost to the edge. The only thing really is really making me hold on is I want to know exactly the historical sources the things that I probably because I'm not really sure if I'm missing anything. I want to just make I don't want to make a drastic decision when I don't know I don't know really the history or different things about a lot of things about it. Yeah.
Go ahead, Matt.
I was going to ask a question a minute ago, which is maybe a little weird, but Eve already kind of touched on it. Why aren't you asking about the history of the Quran or the Bhagavad Gita or other religions?
I don't know. Yeah, that's a good question. It's because, well, it's probably because I didn't grow up on it, and I don't really think that they're real, but also I don't really know at this point if the God of the Bible is real. So,
Yeah, I think
Yeah, to me,
for me, uh, the whole reason for asking that is it's kind of demonstrating the bias. Like you don't have any reason to think that the Quran is real or whatever else, and you're not looking into it. You're only interested in the history of the one book that is relevant to like your upbringing or your current thoughts. And I understand that that's important to look into. The only point in asking a question is you're already starting with a bias. Let's say you found out that pick 4 holy books and the Bible isn't the modern version of the Bible, and how it happened makes it less reliable than some other holy book. Let's just hypothetically, it may be the most reliable, it may be the most accurate, but let's assume for a second that of the 4, it's like number 2. Would you then switch to the religion that was based on the most reliable and best attested holy book?
uh, I don't think so. No.
Yeah, I wouldn't. And the other thing is, like, let's say they're all really bad. Wouldn't that be kind of like picking the smartest village idiot and letting that person be your guru? So it's not so much how did this come to be, but how accurate is it in what it actually says? And the entire history of the Bible and in the 66 books that's in the Protestant Bible, they're written by a bunch of different authors. We have no originals for any of them. We don't know who wrote most of them, although there's some traditional names attributed to them. We don't have any way to investigate the claims that are in them. And so when you're reading, for example, the Gospel of Mark, Mark chapter 16, in the oldest and best manuscripts, ends just before at or before verse 9. I think it ends at verse 8, I believe. And then verses 9 through 20 are often considered to be a late interpolation and addition. Does that mean that verses 9 through 20 should be considered gospel, for lack of a better word? Or should we throw those out? And how would you tell? Because Mark chapter 16, verse 9 is after the resurrection, and it includes things like, here, I'll just read it. The Great Commission, starting at 14. Afterwards, he appeared to the 11 as they sat at a meal and upbraided them with unbelief and hardness of heart because they believed not, which they had seen that he was risen. And he said unto them, go ye therefore into all the world and preach the gospel to every creature. So this includes the Great Commission in verse 15. He that believeth and is baptized shall be saved, but he that believeth not shall be damned, which gives a particular doctrine about belief and baptism being required for salvation, which isn't consistent with all the other New Testament writings. And these signs shall follow them that they believe. In my name they shall cast out devils, they shall speak in new tongues, they shall take up serpents, and if they drink any deadly thing, it shall not hurt them. They shall lay hands on the sick, and they shall recover. Now, this particular passage is why you have snake handling churches in Tennessee and Kentucky and elsewhere. But since it specifically says that true believers, true apostles, true people out there spreading the gospel can drink any poisonous thing and it won't hurt them, why don't we put that to the test?
Mm-hmm. I understand what you're saying. I've heard those things before. And I was just, and yeah, I'm just, it surprises me because I'm like that can't it just doesn't it just doesn't make sense, and it just doesn't work. You're not gonna heal somebody in that.
Patrick, I think first of all, I'm not. I'm really proud of you for questioning something that you grew up in. I think that's amazing, and I am saying this not to make fun of you, but to kind of bring a little bit of self-awareness to the moment. It sounds like what's happening is that you're doubting this faith that you grew up in for really good reasons, and you are calling an atheist show to kind of give it one last chance. And to me, that says a lot already. You're already kind of like over it, and you're already thinking that skeptics are your best bet at searching for truth, which is really interesting. And I think that you should run a little further with that skepticism. And instead of looking for reasons like to rule the Bible out, because then where, like Matt was saying, where do you end? Do you move on to the Quran next? Start looking for reasons why you should even believe that to begin with. And I think that would help your journey go along a little bit quicker. But I think it should tell you a lot about yourself already that you're calling atheists to kind of give Christianity one last shot. You know what I mean?
Yeah, well, and that's one of the things that I did. I like one time I called the line and I asked and it was when like Forrest was on, for example, and I asked, and I had a list of like why I believed and why well, one of and the other one was why I'm scared to be an atheist, and so and these are things that I wrote down, and it turned out I had more reasons to be scared of being an atheist and actually believing, and like
Right.
I didn't really know what that meant. So but like and a lot of the things that were the reason why I believed were not really, like, a lot of them weren't really valid, like belief,
Right.
like faith, personal experience, and and just and not really like having a lot of knowledge of like the Bible or like the things in the Bible or like the historical like research and stuff.
Yeah, it sounds like you're on a really good track. The fact that you're able to look and hear things and be honest, unlike the caller we just ended things with, I think that's amazing, and you should continue with that. I would say that you should check out Recovering from Religion, because probably a lot of what's keeping you, like you said, it's fear, and it's probably stuff that has nothing to do with actual doctrine. And they offer some amazing resources over there. But I think you're on a great track. Just ask more tough questions, and I don't think giving the Bible a shot makes a lot of sense. You're going to end up wasting a lot of your time. But continuing to be self-aware and maybe check out some other resources for other parts of, like religious trauma is very much a thing. People can continue, maybe not even literally believing, but feel like they have to pretend they're believing due to fear. And like you're saying, those aren't good reasons to not acknowledge truth or to not acknowledge what you don't know.
Yeah, yeah. When in Recovering from Religion, is it a free resource, or is it like
Yep.
do I have?
It is absolutely
They're an
free.
amazing organization.
You can chat with them online. There's a hotline where you can call if you want to actually talk. There's also the ability to text chat online, and they are not there to convince you to give up your religion. They're there to talk to you about what your concerns are, and it's a great resource that I'm constantly promoting, and we're actually doing a fundraiser for them coming up soon. But yeah, I'd recommend reaching out to them.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you.
Thanks, Patrick. Good luck to you. Proud of you. Thanks for calling.
We have a couple of atheist callers that I definitely want to get to, but we got one final theist caller.
All right.
And James in Indiana, pronouns are him, has a question about Earth. and its position in the solar system. So go ahead, James. You're on with Matt and Eve.
Awesome. I appreciate it. Yeah, I want to get your take on if the Earth and universe is perfectly sound, how is that not created by a creator?
Perfectly sound? What do you mean?
Well, I mean, as far as, if the universe is off a little bit as we spin and, we have air and just, the atmosphere, if that's off from what I understand, then that's total chaos. So if it's perfectly sound, I guess for lack of a better term, how would that not be created?
Why would that necessarily? So let's imagine that the universe wasn't suited for life, then obviously we wouldn't be here to discuss it, right?
True, yeah.
So in any universe where we exist, the universe has to be amenable to our existence and habitable. And so since we understand a little bit about evolution on Earth, evolution of carbon-based life forms on Earth, what we know is that the process of natural selection is one where the creatures that are suitable for inhabiting a certain area are the ones that are selected for, and the creatures that are unsuitable for those areas are selected against. So in every scenario where life proceeds to evolve, whatever creature ends up existing is exactly the sort of creature that can exist in that universe, right?
That's understandable, I guess, to a point. But if humans have always been around and we're the only planet that
humans haven't always been around.
We haven't always been around.
The Earth hasn't always been around. The universe is like 13.7 billion years old, but the Earth's about 4.5 billion years old.
Yeah,
and humans have only been
true. But even taking the human aspect out of it, wouldn't it be created? The Earth, the universe wouldn't have been created, even if we was created later, or even animals being created, even if
the
they
Earth
evolved.
Or the universe, because humans can't survive in like the majority of the universe. So clearly it wasn't designed for us.
Well, I mean, we're living here, so that could be up for debate. I mean, we're obviously living here, so I would think it's for us, but it still doesn't stop.
It's not up for debate that we can't survive in the majority of the universe. I mean, there's a reason even astronauts
No, yeah. You're right. Just on Earth. That's what.
I'm just saying small areas. Just on small
just like
parts
a very,
of the Earth.
very small, like.
As a matter of fact, we can only exist on.
Cut out humans or even life. What about just the creation of the universe?
Hang on. So first of all, there's no reason to think that the universe is created. You don't get to call it created. Creation needs to be demonstrated. The universe exists, and there must be some explanation for that existence, but you don't get to call it a creation. You'd have to demonstrate that. But humans and life can only exist on certain parts of the Earth after a certain period of time.
Sure.
What about it suggests that it's created?
Just because it's here, as far as anyone living, if you're just a realist, anything you see is created. So basically,
is a tree created?
Well, I mean, I guess if you go back to the aspect of in the beginning of creation and how, the gases and everything was created, atoms and all that, and how things come together, that would be my understanding of, just how science would work in that aspect. But who created the science?
Literally, that sentence makes no sense. So, is a grain of sand created as like an intentional creation?
But by man, I guess not.
No. Yeah. I didn't say by man. Why? Don't add anything to it, James. Do we have reason to think that a grain of sand is the result of an intentional creation by anything, like a god, a man, anything? Do we have good reason to think that it's an intentional creation?
That's a tough question.
What about hydrogen?
Get where you're getting.
Do we have any reason to think that a hydrogen atom is the result of an intentional creation?
I guess some people would say yes.
Okay. What is the reason? How do we tell the difference in that scenario? The people who think that hydrogen atoms are created, is there anything that's not created in that scenario?
Yeah, I'm kind of looking at from the something from nothing aspect. That's what I'm having trouble with.
We're not talking about so science doesn't advocate something for nothing. That's religion that advocates something for nothing, and not even all of those.
Okay.
How do you tell that? If we tell that things are intentionally created because there's evidence for that intentional creation, and because we contrast things that are created with things that are naturally occurring. If theists want to say that the naturally occurring world is also created, then everything is created, and they no longer have any way to contrast it with something that's not created. So if everything is created, how could you ever tell that anything was created?
Okay, you got a point. You can't. You definitely can't demonstrate who created what, or if it was created. I understand that. I'm just thinking outside how
Okay, so
it came to be.
If we now have a position where some things are created and some things aren't, then we tell whether or not something is created by contrasting it with those things which are naturally occurring. So, are humans naturally occurring?
No, yeah. I mean, we have to. We have to procreate.
But we're still naturally
we just don't
occurring.
Naturally come here.
No, we are naturally occurring.
Well, yeah, naturally by procreating, yes.
We reproduce,
reproducing.
And the process is through self-replicating molecules. It's not like there needs to be any sort of intervention when a sperm cell and an egg cell get together.
True, but I mean, wouldn't that technically be by two creators, man and woman?
No. That's not creation. That's just a natural process. It's just like the same way any living thing reproduces. Life. Living reproduction isn't creating.
Okay, I mean, I don't totally agree with that. I would think. I mean, so you wouldn't call creating life by reproducing?
There's no creation. Reproduction is merely matter following chemistry, following the physical rules of reality to replicate and build. There's nothing coming out of nothing. It is merely a change in patterns. The matter changes pattern. And at some point, the pattern that is me didn't exist. And that pattern begins, but all we've done is applied that label to existent matter. There's no new matter created for me.
So the DNA wasn't created, your specific DNA or whatnot?
Correct. The chemicals that I am built of were not created for me. They existed and were changed to this pattern that we call me.
Right. I mean, I think a lot of people could argue that's still somewhat a creation, but I understand what you're saying as well.
Sure. So the fact that some people might call it a creation doesn't mean that, getting back to what you were talking about originally, if the universe allows me to come into existence, the pattern that is me, but everything about me already existed, it'd be like, imagine a whole bunch of Lego blocks. You can build them into different patterns. And so if you build them into, a replica of, down of a castle, that castle didn't come into existence. The pattern was made out of things that already existed. When we talk about origin of the universe, and life and things like that, where's the evidence that something came into being that didn't exist?
Yeah, that's what I'm trying to figure out. Whether it's whatever was the matter and everything you're talking about was already here. Well, wouldn't that have been put here by something
At
instead
what
of it just
time?
coming out of nothing?
When did the matter not exist?
Yeah, that's the $1 million question, I guess.
It's not $1 million question. It is, all the evidence suggests that the matter always existed.
And that is, where could you find something like that? I mean, did you research that somewhere?
Well, Big Bang cosmology suggests the origin of the expansion of the universe began with essentially a mathematical singularity, and the matter always existed because time began to exist at the instant. We can't get back beyond the Planck time, so we can't explore past the very tiniest fraction of a second after that. But the math dictates or suggests that this matter existed and expanded. The Big Bang is an expansion, not a creation.
Right. But then that still goes back to, could a creator outside of space and time have created the Big Bang?
I don't know, but somebody would need to demonstrate that that's what happened. But what we do know
is
that
so it's a possibility.
Hang on. No. We don't know if it's a possibility. The mere fact that we can't rule it out does not mean it's an actual possibility. It may in fact be impossible and we're just unaware of it. But when you look at the expansion, everything from the instant of the expansion in the Big Bang cosmology is just physics. There is no space. Yeah, there is no space for any intervention. There is no space for a God to tinker. There is no space for any sort of creative force. It is just boom, it all starts happening and follows natural law.
I totally agree with pretty much most of that. I'm not ruling out it could have been started by a creator and then evolved.
I didn't rule it out either. I didn't rule it out either.
Okay, cool.
But I don't have any reason to believe that is the answer.
Sure. Understandable. And I appreciate it. I've seen a handful of shows, and I've never really seen this topic really be addressed. So it was fun to talk to you about it.
Okay, cool. Eve, did you have anything to add? I know I kind of monopolized that one.
No. That was
great. No, not really. No, that was good.
I was talking to my co-host, who you may not even have known is here because I took over that call.
No, I'm not watching James. The TV or anything. I'm just, I'm just listening to you. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Thanks, James. All right. We have a couple atheist callers to get to, and then it'll be super chats, and we're doing all the super chats over. Oh, I forgot to ask. Do you have a time that you need to leave, or
I'm good?
Are you going to stick? Good.
I can hang out.
Have some fun. Sweet. Sean in Kansas, thank you so much for waiting an hour and a half to, I don't know, probably get lambasted by me or something. Welcome.
Hey, thank you so much. I appreciate both of you guys having me on.
Sure.
And I grew up in a family, a very devout Islamic family. And I'm kind of, I guess you could say I'm a Muslim in recovery. And then my father, he converted to a sect within Islam, which is called Ahmadiyya, which is kind of a little-known sect. People know about Sunnis and Shias, but they don't know about Ahmadiyya. And he was very much into that. So I grew up in that culture. And I went along with it just for the sake of preserving the family sanity. You know, there was a lot of, obviously, pressure. But I couldn't maintain that for very long, and so there was a lot of conflict. And then I had to leave my family just because it became very abusive. And so that's my background. But I guess, and I've listened to Matt, you know, in the process of like trying to discover what I believe. I did come across Matt, and I was exploring a lot of the other YouTube. I was exploring actually the ex-Muslim community, mostly on YouTube. And over time, I kind of came to grow out of it a little bit. But I did come across Matt, and he still is like one of the people who has influenced me the most in his conversations he's had with Muslims on his show too. were very much enlightening to me. But I guess one of the reasons I left the ex-Muslim community, I don't call myself ex-Muslim anymore, is because I came to think that, like, on my own personal journey, like what I wanted to achieve, like the meaning of life and spirituality, was to try and be the healthiest person psychologically, I guess. I had suffered quite a bit under Islam, and it led to like a period in life in which I really went like to the, depression, substance abuse, like just like meaninglessness, nihilism. Like I went through all of that, and it's not fun to like live like that, and I didn't want to live like that. So I tried to like bring myself out of that, and it's only recently that I really have come out of it through finding a wife and then having a 17-month-old baby, and that's given me like a lot of purpose in my life.
Awesome.
But go ahead. And if you guys want to interrupt me or ask me, you're more than welcome to.
No, it just says here that you have spiritual beliefs, and I'm trying to figure out, what you mean by them. And
that's yes, absolutely. So, so one of the things I if I can just ask you a question, like,
Sure.
Matt, and it's not like a trick question, it's more for exercise. Matt, where is your car right now?
Well, my truck is, as far as I'm aware, in the driveway.
Okay, and you're sure of it?
No, I'm not sure of anything. I don't have absolute certainty in anything, but I have a very high
Okay.
confidence.
Yes. Yes, exactly. And that's exactly how I am looking at life. But most people, when I do ask that question to that exercise, most people they say, oh, they know their car's in the driveway, they know where it's at, and then
Well, you made the mistake of asking somebody who doesn't think you can be absolutely certain about anything.
No, I had a feeling actually you would answer that, because I followed you. You're a very critically thinking person, but most people aren't as critically thinking as yourself. But most people will say they're certain, and then I'll ask them, is it possible somebody broke into your car and drove it? I'll say, is it possible it's actually in a gas station? And they'll say, of course not. And then I'll say, is it possible somebody broke into your car? So I guess what I've realized is I need to always admit the possibility I'm wrong about anything. And if I don't do that, then I'm not. Yeah.
I can actually look at the security camera on my phone right now with a live feed, or poke my head out the window and actually see my truck. And I still would not say I'm absolutely certain. I would just say I'm maximally certain. But what's the point?
Right. Well, I guess the point is, like, most people feel very certain about their beliefs, and that's why, like, atheism, I guess, is it a religion? Is it a movement that is also certain about the belief? I haven't like spent enough time as an atheist to actually know, so I'm still trying to explore that.
Atheism is merely the position of not being convinced that a God exists. It has nothing to do with certainty about a God not existing or anything like that.
Right. It's not an answer. It's just a response to the God claim.
Okay, got it. Right, absolutely.
So as an atheist, I say I don't know more than I ever did as a religious person.
Yep.
Okay. So, and I kind of believe in this, but I guess where I differed is I decided to kind of go back to the Muslim community somewhat. And I don't believe at all in Islam. I don't believe in it at all. I believe it's like a cult very much and so forth. But I realized that it was my family, and it was like growing up in that atmosphere and environment of the family that was so damaging to me. But I realized actually there's some decent people in all communities, and even like, and now that I have a son, like, I didn't want it to grow up with I started thinking, like, what's the best thing for him and so forth. So I actually went back to the mosque. Now I don't pray and I don't believe in it, but I take my son there so he can kind of be exposed to something, and hopefully he can go through that process. I think, Matt, you were okay, because so I think you were a believer at one point, and then
yes.
I think from you talking about you were a believer, and I'm like very much different than most of the YouTube people. Like, I never believed, like, even as a child, like when I heard my mother describe the Abrahamic faith, I disbelieved.
You're not answering the question.
What was the question?
Why are you taking your kid to religious things that you don't believe in? Why are you
That you
exposing your
yourself
kid
said,
to something
Okay.
that
and you
you
said
don't
it
think
caused
is
you
true?
harm.
Let me answer the question. The reason I decided to do it is, number one, so he could meet some friends in the community, because growing up as a Muslim in America is actually also a ethnic identity and a religious identity that I've never been able to shake. Even though I completely disbelieve, I'm completely, like you said, according to your, unfortunately, I still fall into the category of Muslim, and I'm treated very much like it. But the
Why?
second reason is so he can go through the process. Oh, well, let me answer the second reason.
So he can go through what
that
process?
of disbelieving. Also, like, I think that's like, so he can make
You
his
know
own
what?
choices, and I don't have to.
No, that's some bullshit. Why would you force your kid to have to learn stuff only to stop believing it later?
No,
Why?
I don't want,
Why wouldn't you?
don't-
Why would you
okay,
stop?
I'm not going to
Stop!
force them.
Stop!
Yeah.
Stop and
I'm
listen.
listening.
No, you're fucking not. You're trying to talk. You ready?
Yes.
Why don't you take your kid to a KKK meeting so he can eventually unlearn that bigotry?
I guess the reason is I don't believe the local mosque is as dangerous as the KKK in Kansas City.
As dangerous?
Wow.
Yes.
Well, cool. So
it's
basically, you
still
want
dangerous.
to introduce your kid to, athlete's foot and jock itch, but not cancer. You want to take him to the
No,
polio party, but not the cancer party.
No, sir, I don't. I don't want to do that.
Okay.
I don't.
I don't understand, because you started this call saying that you experienced, you had a negative experience with,
Yes.
with your Muslim upbringing, and now you're wanting to do that to your child. Like, it would honestly make more sense if you were telling us that you were now taking him to church, to a Christian church or something like that. But I don't understand why the thing that you're admitting caused you harm, you're now going to subject your kid to the exact same thing. And he's trusting you to show him truth, and you're saying that you know this isn't truth, and yet you're still subjecting your child to it. That feels really fucked up.
Can I answer you guys?
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay. Listen, I respect you guys 100%, but you're actually putting words in my mouth. So I'm actually going to be telling him what I believe, and I don't believe in it. And I'll be explaining to him, I'll be very honest, like what happened in my family and how I got to the process of not believing, because I won't be praying or believing or pushing anything. And I won't be putting him through the thing my father put, because I won't be doing any of that, actually. So, but the main thing is, like, I just wanted him to have friends, like, and he'll be in a public school, so he'll make American
So what
friends.
if he
I
ends
just want
up?
to have a lot.
What if he did you see my debate with Daniel Hakikachu?
No, but I definitely would I would support you 100% in the debate. I know him. And,
what if your son ends up agreeing with Daniel Hakikachu that it's okay to marry and have sex with 4-year-olds, and that Sharia law should be implemented so that you and I should be killed for pointing out that the Prophet Muhammad raped a 9-year-old? What if your son, after being introduced in the mosque, which is a relatively harmless mosque in Kansas City, falls down into the pit of absolutely vile Islamic and Islamism beliefs?
okay.
How are you going to feel then?
Let me answer you. Okay. If that happened, what you described, of course, I'd be horrified. I think I'd be absolutely horrified if he did that. But I've never even heard of a person who's that extreme. Like, I've met a lot of people in the community. Like I said, I grew up in it, unfortunately. But I've never met anybody who ever went that extreme. I know there are people. Of course there are.
So it's really weird that I've met them and debated them and interacted with them, and they're all over social media, and they're attacking us constantly, and yet you've never heard of them, and you don't see this as a risk.
No,
I think that you are clueless about the actual risks in the world, and that you are trying to rationalize an incredibly dangerous and unjustified thing so that you don't feel like you're doing something bad when you in fact are.
I think Islam is a cult. It's very mentally ill, the scriptures. And
then why are you taking your child to the cult meetings?
Thank you. Yep.
Why are you taking your child to the cult meetings?
I would never take my child to a cult meeting, ever.
Let me answer. And I'm glad you guys had me on. And if we have the time, like, I would love to answer your question. So, okay. I'm going to call another time when there's time. But the reason is,
I'm not sure I want to talk to you another time.
Okay. Well, Matt, I'm sorry. I did not mean to upset you.
Answer
Can,
Eve's
can you
question.
tell us? Can
Why?
you tell us in a couple sentences why you're taking your child to a cult meeting and why this specific one that you already had a bad experience with?
Okay, I'm not going to be taking there for prayer, nor for Quran, nor for any of the
It
teachings of
doesn't
Islam.
matter
I just
why
know
you're
that.
taking them. The options
Let me
are.
explain. Let me explain. Let me
No,
explain. When you cut me
no.
off.
As a matter of fact, Sean,
there's-
I'm going to
there's-
mute you. I'm going to mute you. Eve's asking a question. It's an important question. Stop
You
doing the
can't
let me
control-
explain and just explain, because we're sitting here saying, hey, here's an individual who acknowledges it's a cult and it's dangerous and it did harm to him, but he's going to take his kid there and doesn't think anything's wrong with that. We'd like to know
don't tell
why.
me why you're not. Don't tell me like I'm not taking him to pray. I'm not. Tell me why you are taking him there.
I'm going to take him there, and I'm going to take him to other religious places so he can expose him to all the places. I'll take him to a church and a synagogue, and I want him to have exposure to all religions and then make his own choices.
That's very different than what you've been saying. So you've been saying that you want him to have community, and you think the solution to that is to take him to the mosque, not
And
to
earlier-
go like have a show and tell of a bunch of different religions. That's a completely different scenario.
Also, earlier, when Eve specifically asked you why you wouldn't take him to Christian church, why didn't you say then, oh, that's exactly what I intend to do? Because now it sounds like you are spinning a different narrative.
I didn't have a chance at the moment to answer.
Oh, fucking bullshit. Don't do this. I didn't have a chance. You had it. I just asked you. I told you when the opportunity was to say this.
Okay.
It sounds like a lie. It sounds like spin.
Are
I'm going to
you
let you go.
choosing?
I'm going to let you go, Sean. Oh, he's got
Okay.
another question.
Have a
So
good-
hold on.
Yeah, just one last question, just so we can clarify.
Yes.
Are you choosing
Yeah.
a Muslim community for your child, like you're saying, and that's going to be the primary religious influence that you allow in their life? Yes or no? Is that what you're doing?
No. I want to
That's
be
what you said earlier. That's what you
So,
said earlier,
yeah.
Sean.
Mm.
Shut up, Sean. No, you're muted. Earlier, if you go back and listen to this call, you were talking about how important it was that being Muslim was an identity beyond the religion, and that you wanted your kid to have an interaction with the Muslim community in a cultural sense that went beyond the religion. And now that we've backed you into a corner on this, now you're telling a different story, which makes it seem like you're just a liar or a prank caller.
Sir, I'm not a prank caller.
And you're a liar,
and
right?
If you say so, yes, I am.
Okay.
Have a good evening, sir.
Do better, man. Think if you're going to do stuff,
It's a weird call.
whether you're specifically lying about this.
I apologize to
I'm
both
still
of you.
talking.
I won't call back.
All right, I'm just going to drop you,
Okay.
and you can listen after the fact. Then, if you're doing it to create a cultural connection to other Muslims, don't then try to spin after you've been backed into a corner that really what you're engaged in is trying to teach comparative religions. Because you know what you can do? You can teach comparative religions without ever setting foot in any fucking mosque or church on the planet. You can teach comparative religions at home, and you can teach it in schools, and there are courses in schools.
Yep.
You did a tap dance to rationalize. And you get to do that. And Eve and I are never going to probably run into you. And maybe your kid turns out just fine. And maybe you're going to do it all correct. And maybe you're going to be the best father ever. And maybe you're going to go down to that mosque and you're going to sit there with your kid and say, I'm only doing this so that you can have some friends that look like us or feel like us. But I want you to know this is all bullshit and you need to stand in opposition to this, which, by the way, is the absolute wrong way to teach someone anything. Instead of trying to indoctrinate him into your atheism, instead of teaching him what to think, you should be teaching him how to think. And I'm a huge proponent of comparative religions courses. I think comparative religions courses should be mandatory and not electives in school, because everybody's got to interact with people from different beliefs. I think it's critical. But you called, and I'm pretty sure, because I've done this for a while, that you called to get my blessing on how you're going to introduce your kid to Muslim culture without indoctrinating him into the religion of Islam. And I called bullshit and you didn't know how to react to it. So you spun. You can do better.
Yep.
You can do it right.
It's a valid issue to need community and to acknowledge that it makes it significantly easier to take your child to mosque. But that doesn't mean that that's the answer. I mean, it's so strange to me that you would acknowledge that you experience so much negativity and now you want to subject your child to that just because it's difficult to find community. That's not a good reason. Make the complaint that it's difficult to find community and there are changes that need to be made. And I'm sure you deal with all kinds of prejudice and bigotry, but taking your child down that route is not the answer. That's like awful. It's really awful and not fair to your child. And I wonder if you end up following through with this plan, how they will reconcile growing up, whatever they end up believing, with a father who apparently was contradicting his actions with his belief.
Yeah, and if you're not familiar with the worst aspects of Islam, you should familiarize yourself with that before you try to figure out whether or not the ones you're familiar with are a great risk or not. We have one final call before we move on to Super Chats. Cole in Virginia, pronouns are they, them. They got a question about voting. So Cole, thank you so much for your patience. Eve and I are, I don't know, ready to pretend to try to answer the question.
Sure.
Yeah.
Or did Cole? Oh, there we go.
Basically,
I thought maybe you fell asleep.
nope, I'm here. Basically, what it boils down to is I'm starting to see more people encouraging others to either vote third party or just not vote in protest. And my concern is if a whole bunch of people do that, then we're going to have a very bad result from it. And like, what's a good way to, or do you have any pointers on, how to argue for, you need to pick whoever you dislike the least and vote for them, otherwise the other guy's gonna win.
Yeah. So my take on this is really simple, and I'll just give it real quick, and then Eve can hit it, and we can move on from there. The time, in my view, the time for third party voting and other things like that is in primaries and other times to kind of say, hey, here's where I'm leading and everything else. The fact of the matter is either Joe Biden or Donald Trump will be the next president of the United States. It is lunacy to suggest that barring one of them dying or something like that, that anyone else has any choice. And in all of those circumstances where somebody else ends up president, it's not ever, ever, ever going to be because people got together and voted third party. And so essentially, no matter how you want to look at it, whether you look at it as, oh, I'm going to vote for the lesser of two evils, which I think is ridiculous because they're not both evil and they're not both the same. But in any case, one of those two is going to end up being president. And you either voted for the one that ended up being president, or you failed to vote for the one that ends up being president. Because if you vote for RFK Jr., what you're saying is between the only two people who are going to be elected, you're okay with either one of them. You're saying there's no difference, that you're okay with Trump or you're okay with Biden, that you don't have a preference between those two. And that is preposterous. And what the one thing that is happening is people are already being convinced to vote against their own self-interest. This is how we lost Roe. This is how we lost the Supreme Court. People voted against their own best interests, and they did it based on all kinds of propaganda that they're all the same, that voting doesn't matter, that it's all rigged, that, George Soros decides who's going to be the president and my vote doesn't matter. There's 80 million people who voted one way, 80 million people voted another way, and 120 million people who didn't give enough of a shit to vote at all. All I can do is keep pointing out that one of these two is going to end up as president. And if you have a preference, vote for your preference. But if you think they're both the same and you just want to throw your vote away, vote third party, what you're saying is you're okay with the one that could be even slightly worse for
Right.
all of us. And I can't do that.
Yep. Yeah, I
Yeah.
agree with what Matt's saying. And to me, it comes off as really performative once you get down to Matt's right. It's going to be one or the other. And to, we all have the right to not vote, and we have to respect that in other people. But yeah, it's throwing your vote away. It seems very performative. And my issue personally, especially with the work that I do, I am an anti-Christian nationalist more than I am anything else. And that is the biggest concern to me. I think that it is a massive threat. I think it is the biggest threat to our democracy. And so I am, whatever you have to tell yourself to get yourself to vote. For me, I tell myself I am voting against Christian nationalism. And I'm very aware of who Christian nationalists are voting for and who has their best interests in mind. And they do not have my best interests in mind. And so I am voting against. That's what I'm using my vote for. So that's kind of where I've come at it. But yeah, it is frustrating and it is really scary for a good reason.
Yeah, it definitely is.
Cole, I appreciate you waiting all that time for those answers. We have just about run completely out of time. I want you to know, though, that I do absolutely share your frustration, because the best thing that can happen for Trump supporters is for people who would be opposed to what Trump wants to do to just not vote. I mean, I can tell you all right now, I will absolutely be voting for Joe Biden. And I would be voting for Spuds McKinsey if he was running against Donald Trump, because I can't stand to have a lying, corrupt, stupid, immoral piece of garbage running the country again, especially one who's already announced that he wants to be a dictator, at least just for one day, who has stolen hundreds of millions of dollars, who just lies at the drop of a hat, and is now, I get pissed when like the caller calls in earlier that wants to treat theism as if it's stupid, because while I disagree that there's evidential warrant for theism, I don't think that everybody who believes in theism is stupid. And it frustrates me that a lot of atheists treat them all as if they are stupid. I'll be happy to point out the ones who I think are being stupid, and even call them that on occasion, but I don't think that's true for everybody. And yet Trump treats them all as if they're stupid. He treats everybody as if they're stupid because Trump himself is stupid, which is why he's now selling Bibles. And I think the funniest thing I saw is that it's actually brilliant for him to sell Bibles, because his followers would never buy encyclopedias or science books or anything fucking useful or anything they would ever have to read. So get the Bible done.
Yeah, I think there's even there's a clip of him saying mid-speech that, I love the uneducated people. So, well, of course he does.
Yeah. On that note, though, Cole, keep fighting the good fight and doing your best, and realizing that it's not up to you to fix everybody. Just keep being honest about what your reasons are. And when the people are saying there's no difference between the two, show them some facts. Show them that there is a difference between the two. If there's no difference between the two, if they genuinely think there's no difference between the two, then they should just go ahead and vote Biden just to make you happy. If you think there's a difference and they don't, why wouldn't they just vote along with you? I mean, that seems to me to be a really good argument. If I genuinely thought that, let's say Eve and Arden were both running for president of the world, and somebody came up to me and said, they're both the same. Neither one of them are any better than the other. And I said, yeah, but I'm voting for Arden. Why don't you just vote for Arden along with me? If you don't see any difference, then certainly it can't hurt for you to vote for Arden. Arden would end up being president of the world. Perfectly reasonable argument. That said, I'd be okay with Eve as president of the world too.
Thank God that's not happening.
I think
I would vote
probably
for
what would
Arden
actually happen
over
is
me.
they would form a coalition and both rule the world.
That would
I
be
like
nice.
this idea. I like
There
this
you
idea
go.
a lot better.
I'm in favor. Cole, I got to run, but thank you so much for the question.
Thanks, Cole.
All right. Bye-bye.
Cheers. All right. So, first of all, I have some housekeeping stuff to take care of before we get on to super chats. Number one is that this is, in fact, a call-in network, and there are call-in shows on a regular basis, including this Sunday, where I will be back for the Sunday show at 2 p.m. Central. I'm not completely sure. I think Paulogia is hosting with me, but we'll find out for sure. On the Transatlantic Call-in show tomorrow will be Arden and Dr. Ben. I don't have the details for Skep Talk on Monday. We know that there's an eclipse and a bunch of other stuff going on, and I think there's maybe some shuffling around. But next Tuesday, you can see my co-host from tonight, Eve Was Framed, along with Alyssa Ljub on Chewed Gum.
Yes.
And next Wednesday, I'll be back with Phil Ferguson on The Hang Up. But I want to let you guys know about something that's been going on, and that is virtually every episode of every show on the line has been targeted and demonetized within an hour or two or three of going live. In that period of time where the shows get the most views, we have repeatedly and consistently been demonetized lately. Jimmy's looking into it. He's working on it, but let's be honest, there's a really good chance that the folks here running the TubeU may not ever do anything about it. And so it has seriously hit revenue from views and advertising and things like that. Super chats are still coming through, although YouTube takes a big cut out of that. And that's why it's important to remind people that one of the best ways to support this program and all the other programs on the network is to go to patreon.com/calltheline or to go to linemerch.com. Pick up some products. Patreon.com is probably the best of that. We are working on potential solutions. I would love to say that there's a problem that's going to go away, but we don't know. We're doing everything we can. And so it's just important to say that if you value this and support it, we love the fact that you're watching. And if that's all that you're able to do, that's great. I'm thrilled that you are here watching and participating in everything else. If there's a way to do more to help leverage the damage that we're taking from whatever the cause is that's causing shows to get temporarily or permanently demonetized, I'm not sure exactly what's the case for all of them. Patreon.com is probably the best way to do that. Line merch, we had a birthday run for the month of March. So I believe that the In-Boss shirt and Jimmy's shirts are no longer available. All that stuff's right, Arden?
Yeah, they should, unless there's a chance they are still up because Jimmy's been feeling unwell today, but they should not be.
All right. But you can still go to linemerch.com for other things. It is now time, dun, 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 for us to start going through the super chats.
Yeah.
Unless I missed an announcement. Did I miss an announcement?
Nope, you got it all.
Sweet. Here we go. From William Mattis. Hey, Matt, would Q be a god? He seems to tick all the boxes in the show. I don't think he actually does tick all the boxes in the show for the god of classical theism, because he's kind of fraudulent in the sense of being all-powerful and all-knowing. He's just really, really powerful and really, really knowing. For those who don't know what the hell we're talking about, Q is a character on Star Trek The Next Generation that identifies as a god, but actually it's not just an individual, it's the Q continuum. So there's a bunch of them and they can punish each other. And so I tend to view them all as a group with incredible power beyond our ability to probably even comprehend what they can and can't do, but not in the sense of all powerful. And the fact that Q is scared of Guinan, that's pretty much all the evidence I need that he probably wouldn't qualify as a god of classical theism.
$5 from, I'm going to butcher this name. We're just going to call you E. Thanks to Eve and atheist Santa Claus. Take my buckaroonies and you know nothing, Jimmy Snow.
That's right. Jimmy Snow. Thank you so much.
Also, real quick, Jimmy, let me know that the birthday merch is actually going to stay up. The competition is over, but the merch is still available. So if you didn't get
Nice.
it during the competition, you can still do that.
Go get your shirts.
That's good. And I have to tell you, so I got Jimmy's shirt in a really nice blue color. And I actually wore it 2 days in a row, not because I'm a filthy person who will wear my clothes all the time, but because on Monday we do all the rat work. And when we were done, we jumped in, took a shower, and I put the t-shirt on for a couple hours. And then Tuesday morning when we got up, we were heading back out. And I was like, well, that didn't get worn for long. So I actually went out in public wearing Jimmy's shirt for a second day. So I can attest to the fact that these shirts are quality shirts that will not be stinky and everything else on day 2.
Very sustainable of you too.
Take a bath anyway. Oh, I just messed this up. Here we go. $5 for Monkey Typewriter. If Matt's parents are right about him working for Satan, what are the odds that he framed Eve? I've blown this whole thing wide open. Eve, you're gay, homie. Hey, hang on. Oh, love Eve, heart Eve, and your gay homie is for me, probably. Thank you so much.
$5 from Toidius. I might finally figure out what's been going on with my heart, and I'm finally getting my daughter for weekends after 9 years of fighting. Matt, go fuck yourself. Congratulations
that's
on
so
both
wonderful.
of those. That sounds like some really good news. That's awesome. Enjoy your weekends.
And I get, I was specifically asking. I know these are the ones that came in very early in the show, and right before we went live, I was saying, hey, tell us your good news. And it's not just here, give me $5 so you can tell me what's good news. There's a lot of bad news, and there's a lot of frustration, and you guys are absolutely my Wednesday therapy. And I love the fact that there's lots of things to share. I love the fact that we got, we had a caller today who is, basically dying and dealing with it from a couple of different directions. Who just made me just generally happy that other human beings live and think. But $10 from Lucifer. If a snake hatches on the day of the eclipse, will you name it Lucifer? Love y'all. We have no snakes that will actually hatch on that day. The eggs that we have in the incubator can't possibly hatch until like May 14th or 15th. But I would name one Lucifer for you if you really wanted me to. The problem is there's already a ball python morph that is sometimes called Lucifer. And we have some. The lemonback is the other name for it, but so it'd be confusing to name one that. But maybe our next lemonback that's born, we could just name it like Beelzebub or something.
$10 from Dan. Matt, it was great meeting you in Tampa. You really made a huge impression on my girlfriend. We were both eagerly awaiting your debate review. Thank you for signing my picture and taking a pic with me.
Oh, that was so nice. Again, I got to meet Dan. He was at the event, the debate that I did last week, and really nice. There's so many nice people who showed up. And actually, the Women Without Religion in Tampa showed up with a group of like 5 or 6, and I think they left with like a group of 9. I think they got several new members out of this debate at the church. So it's good all the way around. $10 from Kara. Big tax returns, and for fuck's sake, next month. Is that?
I don't know.
Will be the best year of my life, despite the impending doom.
That's facial feminization surgery. This is yes.
Thank you.
Gender affirming, yeah.
For fuck's sake.
This is the problem with me not being in the loop on everything. So it's not for fuck's sake. Although, you could look at it that way long term. But yes. So let me try this again. $10 from Kara. Big tax return and facial feminization surgery next month will be the best year of my life, despite the impending doom. I couldn't possibly be happier for you. And thanks for correcting.
So exciting.
The dumbass here who only thinks in curse words.
$9.99 from Steven. Do you agree that you can't be spiritual and religious at the same time? With faith, the authority / God is the truth, but with spirituality or questioning reality in that truth is the ultimate authority. I don't know what the definition of spirituality is because everyone uses it different every single time. So I don't know how to answer that. Religious people consider themselves to be spiritual all the time. So I think that's really just vague.
I can say that when I was a Christian, there were periods of time where I probably wouldn't have identified. There's a fad within Christendom where people are like, I'm not religious. I have a personal relationship with Jesus Christ.
Yeah, I was
Religion
one of
is
those.
other stuff. But also recognizing that Christianity is a religion, I would say, yes, I'm religious. Yes, I'm spiritual. And so there are people who are like, I'm spiritual, but not religious. And I keep
Right.
asking, what does it mean? So I don't have any way to answer your question, Stephen, other than to say, I don't have any reason to think those things are necessary. Oh, excuse me. I don't have any reason to think those things are necessarily mutually exclusive. So it's going to end up being dependent on the individual's definitions. But $5 from PT Colin. What's your least favorite Gen Z slang word? Riz.
I don't even know any Gen Z. I'm so out of the loop. I don't even know what Riz is supposed to mean. Honestly,
I think Riz
it's
is like your ability to like attract people. Like
okay.
you got the hots, you got the suave. Let me put as many old things. You're the bee's knees. You got the.
Okay,
I think
cool.
that's what Riz is. It's like
That's making
if you're
more
looking,
sense.
it's like which way do you swipe if you like somebody? Is that swipe right?
Oh, I don't know any
I
of
haven't
those.
either.
Yeah.
Honey, help me
See, I'm
out.
like as millennial as it gets. I
I
don't
think
know any of this shit.
swipe right is the good one. Yeah, it's
Okay,
just like
if
charm
swipe
and
right is the
charisma.
good one, then people with Riz are the ones you swipe right on.
You swipe right on. Okay. I got it.
That's the best I can do.
$9.99 from Steven. I ask because I hear people use faith and spirituality interchangeably when they are separate. Spirituality is an introspective process to ensure that your internal truth matches the external truth. I mean, even if
Oh
we're
no.
going with that definition, the problem is that I know so many Christians who would say that that's what they're doing. So, yeah. And all of that depends on like an objective standard for that. So, yeah, still same answer.
I have said repeatedly and will that I think the goal and the best definition for truth is that which comports with reality. And what I want is for
Yeah.
my internal model of reality to match the external reality as best as possible. That's the core of skepticism, or why I'm a skeptic, because I want that accurate model.
Hmm.
And I have no use for and no understanding of anything spiritual. So the definition that you're using for spirituality is completely foreign to me.
And that gentleman earlier tonight, didn't he say spirituality was the belief that we can communicate with something outside of ourselves? So it's like, again, everybody has a different
That
answer.
something that isn't mundane, and I don't know.
Yeah, mundane. I don't want to hear that word again.
$10 from PhD Tony. If David is so invested in reducing human suffering, has he considered shutting up?
Oh God.
That was a bit much, but
I
it reminds me. I posted a meme from somebody where it's like, I was rude, but I was rude to an idiot, and that just made me laugh, even though it's mean. But thanks, Tony.
$5 from Jeff. What's the book you enjoyed reading the most in the last year?
Ooh. Actually, in the last year, I reread a science fiction novel that I've read several times, and it's called "The Man Who Never Missed," and it is the first
Nice.
in a really good series. It's a quick read, and that series I started reading when I was a Christian in the Navy, and it introduced me to a lot of ideas and changed my views on a number of things, including aspects of sexuality and morality and rebellion and stuff. It's a great novel. By
Nice.
Steve Barrett.
Yeah, I think mine's actually a reread too, Gone Girl, which is purely to escape from everything. It's entertainment, and it's a great book. The writing is amazing, and I love the character. But I think when you do this kind of work, for me, sometimes I enjoy reading the most when it's for no purpose.
I do so much reading of, like right now, I'm doing this research on a potential miraculous healing case. And so I'm going through and reading lots of technical things and philosophical things and some absolutely
Yep.
awful things from ministry sites trying to advocate for something that is just outlandishly far-fetched, that when I get to reading, like the books that are right next to me are two Bart Ehrman books, Lost Christianities and Lost Scriptures, both of which are, well, Lost Christianities is my favorite from him. But I also have Dr. Jack Van Impe's Revelation Revealed, which I have kind of been re-going through a little bit lately. But the one that I haven't actually read, but I keep around because I'd like to eventually read through the relevant parts, is the 19th century Charles Mackay's Extraordinary Popular Delusions and the Madness of Crowds. Ooh, look, there's just a little bit of green on there, but it talks about all of these beliefs that people have around the world, whether or not there's any good reason to believe in them. So
Nice.
$5 from William Mattis. Can I worship that magnificent beard? You can. I can't stop you from worshiping the magnificent beard. Unless you meant Eve's magnificent beard, which is invisible, but it's wonderful.
$9.99 from Greg Murkowski. Thanks for having Eve on. She is so fantastic. Thank you.
Sure.
Bought and read Innumerancy. It was fun. Thanks for the recommendation.
Thanks, Greg. Yeah, Innumeracy is the book that I recommend just generally more than any, but I haven't reread it this past year, so I couldn't reference that. $19.99 from Narrative Dude. You two are my new double issue team up superheroes. You're suited up and making the world safe for democracy and spirited debate. My inescapable question tonight is, what is your catchphrase? Oh boy.
Mine is easy. I have mine figured out because it's over on my Instagram already. But my catchphrase is "eat the apple" because it's the whole Eve was framed. I know it wasn't. We don't know what kind of fruit it. Well, first of all, it was no fruit. But for branding purposes, I picked an apple. So, eat the apple. It's my way of saying ask the question, challenge the religion, deconstruct, all of those good things.
I think if I had a catchphrase, it's I want to believe as many true things and as few false things as possible. But as a duo, as a
Good one.
superhero duo,
Oh,
for
yeah.
us,
Sorry, I
it
misread
should
that
be,
question.
we could combine it and just say, eat the truth.
There we go. Perfect.
That's our catchphrase.
I was going to say something about the impermanence of the mundane of phone calls with theists. Is this one mine? $5
so.
from the Raven. I tried to send a super chat earlier and it was in yen. I was so confused for a moment. Then I realized my VPN was set to Tokyo. Jimmy, I blame you. That is confusing.
See, that's what happens. There's a lot more people using VPNs now that Texas has made Pornhub and others shut down their access to their website in the state.
Wow.
$10 from Storm Chaser Noah. Dying doesn't scare me, but the thought of what loose ends I could leave behind scares the heck out of me. Yeah, I get that. That's a lot
fair.
of what I was trying to reference. And the bigger thing is that the process of dying potentially scares the crap out of me. I would hate to have like a long-term suffering, drawn out thing. But an instantaneous death, what the heck have I got to be scared of that? I'm not even going to know it happens, or probably not. And if I do, I'm not going to know it for very long. But
$5 from the Raven. Refusal to answer yes or no equals red flag. Jimmy, go get locked in a Regal stretch by William Regal after taking a power of the punch by him, brass knuckles and all.
that's fair.
Yeah, the yes or no questions and inability to answer those, especially when it's so obvious, like when it's mostly being asked just to get you to acknowledge reality with the rest of us. That is infuriating and it is a massive red flag. It's really a conversation ender at that point. Or over here, it's the hang up. So.
The ones that really get me are the ones like Tom, where it's like, is the time enough on its own for a fire? No. Is the time enough on its own for the universe? Well, I think that's a difference in, oh my,
Yeah.
Like,
Yep.
I'm not violent, but I want to throat punch an invisible person at that point. 10 pounds from Faye. Eve, should teaching children purity culture be considered child abuse? Should children have a right to not be taught misinformation? Great show. Hydrate and masturbate. Matt, your gay homie, great show.
I love that that's catching on. Hydrate and masturbate is something Alyssa said on our first episode. So now it's caught on. So should it be considered child abuse? Well, purity culture, we'd have to define exactly. Do I think that parts of the teachings are abusive? Absolutely. We can measure the trauma that it's caused people. We're, learning more and more about the effects of religious trauma, which includes purity culture. So yeah, in general, I think it's pretty abusive. We'd have to get down to specifics of what's being taught because you ask Christian to Christian and purity culture varies. So, but yeah, I think it's really fucked up to teach a child that you are responsible for the sexual urges of adults.
Or anybody else at any age,
Right.
no matter what.
Exactly.
Let's make sure our women have to wear bags because men can't be trusted. Also, I just got a message from
Right.
Jimmy. I was actually meant to wear my End Boss shirt today to signal that I actually won the thing.
Oh man.
And I didn't, but I will. I'm also supposed to let you guys know that Jimmy may not be around for the month of April, but he will make sure that he wears the shirt several times when he's back. And don't everybody go like, oh my gosh, what's it? We'll update you with any additional information as the case may be. But a little under the weather, dealing with some stuff. It's all going to be good.
We love you, Jimmy.
Yay. Well, I don't, but you can.
I do.
We
I
all
won't speak
love
for Matt.
I just don't like to tell him because he makes him uncomfortable and, because I'm gay, homie.
I don't care. I'll just say it. Is this me?
Yeah.
$5 from Corey Springer. This super chat intentionally left blank. Are you sure it was intentional?
It doesn't look blank. It looks like there's a message there. $5 from Monkey Typewriter. Matt, how dare you denigrate my people? Speaking as the smartest village idiot. We demand to be taken seriously. Great show. You two are a fun pair. I like us as a fun pair here too.
Yeah. This has been a fun night. $5 from Drew. I came in late, but if you're close but not in totality, you absolutely should drive to it. 99.9% is indescribably different than totality.
Yeah, we will figure out exactly what happens. Literally, I think I may be less than a quarter mile from the edge of totality. So
that's so
we'll
cool.
skip out for a little while, but $4.99 from Steven. If you need further clarification about my explanation of spirituality, I can answer on a call. Thanks for the content. Well, another time, but
yeah,
maybe.
$4.99 from Ben. Great show tonight, guys. Matt and Eve are a good combo.
See?
Especially since Matt finally let me talk, guys?
I know.
Just kidding.
So frustrating.
Just for the record, that is a joke. Go listen to the beginning of the episode.
Somebody literally commented that at the last call, and I was like, dude, you gotta go back.
Yeah, go back and listen, guys. I talk when I want to.
Be kind, rewind. And that's the other thing. And don't get me wrong. I know what people think about me, and I know what kind of confusion and misunderstanding people are likely to come up with. Despite what they think, I don't actually just love to hear myself talk. But I've also done this for 19 years, and you develop over time with new co-hosts a rapport where you figure out what people are comfortable with, what they're not comfortable with. And it takes a couple of episodes. And my primary duty is to make sure that we're producing good content. And like, if Eve wants to say something, Eve will always be able to just say it. But there's a rapport that builds. And in some cases, it takes a little longer. And in some cases, it may build instantly and yet not appear so, because I've had co-hosts, not Eve, say, if there's a question that is anything philosophy jargon related, I don't want to deal with it. I've literally had co-hosts say that. And so that puts me in the position of, okay, anytime this question is going to come up, I'm going to have to drive. And sometimes that spills over. But yeah, go back and listen to the thing at the beginning. Is this me or you?
Do it. You.
$9.99 from Adam. Listening to Matty D and the Grateful Dead gets me through the work days. Keep it up. Uncle John's band.
$10 from Susie Dawson. And this one was actually left blank.
Yes.
Thanks,
and I'm
Susie.
hoping intentionally, Susie, I got your email. I haven't replied to you because I've been crazy busy, and I'm not sure if I'll get to reply to you other than to say I got your email. Thank you. $10 from Dirkby. Greg Maxwell was a member guitarist preacher of my church as a child, and I hear he's a legend in the snake world. Ever heard of this dude, Matt? That name does not ring a bell, but he could very well be a legend in the snake world, and I might not have heard of him. Early on, like in the 90s, when I first wanted to start breeding snakes, before there was an internet, it would be, you know, the names of some of the guys that showed up in the magazines specifically for the pythons that I was mostly interested in. And so if Greg was breeding stuff outside of the python realm, I wouldn't have heard of him. Nowadays, there are quite a few big name breeders, and some of them specialize and some of them work more broadly. So I don't know Greg and don't know of Greg, but I'll keep my eyes and ears open for sure.
Apparently, he kind of pioneered some sort of way to do chondros a lot. So green tree pythons.
Ooh.
Yeah, some sort of cage setup is accredited to him.
This is why that's right up Arden's alley. So
$10 from Kara. In that case, I have 10 extra bucks.
Sweet. I will
Thank
take
you.
your 10 extra bucks and try to get more out of you at some point. That's why Jimmy doesn't fire me, because on occasion I do ask for and make a little bit of money here. 50 from Darius Mahai. And I have no idea what that currency is, but it's cool. $10 to support the show a bit. It ain't much, but it's honest work. Thanks for everything. It's more than enough, and it's greatly appreciated.
Thank you. Yeah. $20 from Puffy Cloud. Here's to hoping we get some YouTube help and the dirty pool gets embarrassed.
Yeah, it's a little frustrating dealing with this. It literally, we would like end a show, and Arden and I'd be sitting downstairs,
Instantly.
and before we can even get the ads up, Jimmy'd send us a message, and he'd be like, demonetized already. It's frustrating.
God.
Another $5 from Monkey to Typewriter. Oh, good news. Had a real rough year. I'm fully divorced. My 3-year-old boy's happy and perfect and adorable. And I got into I got into a master's in teaching program. Something about the fact that you strung a bunch of words together and then spaced some other ones out really threw my brain a curve. Congratulations, Monkey at Typewriter.
Congrats. That's all awesome news.
That's sweet.
$5 from SJL. Riz comes from charisma. Come on, Matt. I'm older than you.
Oh, God.
Oh,
So
I get
freaking
it.
right.
Riz from charisma. Wow.
I feel extra
right.
stupid right now.
Man.
And of course it makes sense because they're getting, short and all kinds of stuff. All right, there we go. So, Riz, charisma. Yes, I got it. Well, see, maybe I knew the whole time and it was just a way to give $5.
There you go.
It wasn't, but it could have been. $4.99 from Jalen Hall. Question for Eve. Have you ever had a discussion with Cliff? If not, would you be open to it? Do you know which Cliff they're talking about?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure I know. It's what's his face's son. I haven't had a discussion with him. He's made content using my content that he did not tag me in. He did not let me know that he made a response. He's actually used my stuff, if I'm remembering correctly, to advertise for something that he was selling. And I've gone over and commented and engaged. I've offered to have him on a live with me before. Nothing. I think I even got blocked on TikTok maybe. So yeah, and now I just kind of have this overall stance that I just don't engage with apologists aside from doing these call-in shows. It's never been worth my time. They're always incredibly rude to me, and they always bring over this crowd that mass reports my content. And my TikTok account has almost been removed. My Instagram content has been taken down anytime they interact with me. So I'm over it. Not that interested. He's clearly not interested in actually engaging or having a discussion with me either.
This wouldn't happen to be Cliff Connectley, who I've debated a few times with.
Yeah, I'm guessing that's
All right.
who. I'm guessing that's who that's referring to, because he's made content using my stuff several times now, and then proceeds to just ignore any responses from me whatsoever. So
Cliff and I have debated a couple times, and I've debated his son, Stuart. And I've debated both of them at the same time.
Oh, it's his. Sorry, it's his son that I'm talking about. So it's not Cliff. So take everything I just said and know that was about Stuart. I don't know about Cliff unless he's helping Stuart make his content. It's his son that doesn't want to engage with me at all. I don't know about. I don't care for.
That's too bad,
Cliff.
because
Sounds
Stuart
like
seemed
Matt's.
like a really nice guy. I guess he's just afraid of you.
I think that the misogyny thing is just not. Why? I don't even want to deal with it. I'd rather let you go have those conversations, because then there's that added layer you don't have to deal with.
I don't think they want a piece of me again, so I guess
Yeah.
they're just going to have to just keep pretending. But go ahead.
$10, the Raven 200. My favorite to least Gen Z slang. 1, catch these hands. 2, bet. Cap, no cap. Is that Gen Z? Cap, no cap? Because I guess I could have said that. 3, yeet. I do say yeet a lot, but I think in an ironic millennial way. 4, Riz, drip, finna. Never even heard that one. 5,
That's like,
F.
I'm finna bust a cap in your ass.
Oh, okay. Got it. Can we take that and just make a clip of you saying that? Goat, oof. I know what all of these mean. I know what some of them mean, but man, it was like a whole nother language.
All right. $5 Canadian from Maxime Bernier. Matt, morality is a product of evolution. Is it a sound proposition? I don't hold to the notion that morality is a product of evolution. I'd recommend, so look up Matt Dillahunty, Superiority of Secular Morality. You'll find a couple copies of the old lecture I did. I think that saying it's a product of evolution is kind of wrong, because there is a sense in which it's correct, but then everything that we think is the product of evolution because we're a product of evolution. I don't see that morality is a product of evolution in a biological sense, and in the psychological sense of changing ideas and things like that. I don't know that it's productive to talk about it as a product of evolution. Instead, any more than science would be. We're trying to discover things about the world. And so if we're trying to discover a way to live better, to increase flourishing and well-being, decrease suffering, etc., then we can't oversimplify it. And I don't talk about it in that particular term. That's the best answer I can give to a very brief question, which I appreciate. But
$9.99 from Dan. Hey Matt, would like to send you and Arden a book I wrote about the BS humans are addicted to, including religion, which you helped inspire. What is a good address?
Yes, because I'm going to give out my mailing address.
Yeah,
right
go
here
ask whoever it was that sent you that other shit, I guess.
Yeah. Jimmy just let me know that there is a P.O. box for the line. If Arden knows what it is or knows how to direct you to it, we can certainly do that. But I don't know.
I don't know it off the top of my head.
Okay. So Dan, hang on to that book that you wrote. Keep watching. Stay tuned. And I will do what I can to find the P.O. box, because I didn't know anything about it until literally today. Because Jimmy's like, wait, did they send that to your house? And I'm like, yeah. And that's why
scary.
I need security. But thanks, Dan. $4.99 from The Inviting Path. When you all were Christians, who was your favorite Christian artist or musical group? That's easy. My all-time favorite Christian musical group is Petra. Still Petra, will always be Petra. Those guys wrote amazingly good songs, were incredibly skilled on their instruments. And if it weren't for the themes, I would listen to 2 or 3 Petra albums today and love it. But the themes, I just can't.
Yeah. My favorites were Rebecca St. James, which is also the source of a lot of my purity culture trauma, and Switchfoot. And I still listen to some Switchfoot. Also DC Talk. Those were the top 3.
Yeah. I'm much older. Petra, not of this world. Carmen was a good second for me. I actually saw both.
Yeah.
I saw Petra and Carmen in 2 different concerts.
Oh,
Because
nice.
one concert with both of them would have just been way too much. That would have been like Christian, orgasm explosion there.
I'm told the address, the P.O. box is in the description, which is the same description that's in literally everything on the line. So
Awesome.
Nice.
Yes, it is right down there. The
We all
line
learned a
110
new
North
thing.
Interstate, blah, blah, blah. It's right. It's the last thing. Round Rock, Texas 78681. This is awesome because
$5.
Susie's done this
Oh, good.
twice. No, it's you.
Yeah, thanks, Susie. And I got them both
I'm going to let you
both
do
times, so I didn't
another
have to
one
read
right
anything.
after.
All
I'm going to let you
right.
do this
I knew
one
that
for
was
a
coming.
reason.
Okay. $10 from the Raven. I almost forgot. Black Air Force energy is one of my favorite slang terms as well. Basically, it's someone thing that has the power and capabilities to destroy its rivals in a disrespectful manner.
Yeah, I had you do that because that means you have officially read every single super chat from the Raven today.
Oh, there we go.
Raven did several of them, and you managed to get them all. $5 from Corey Springer. Here's the other reason. That was a quick one, an easy one for me. And this, for now, is the final super chat, although somebody may change that while you're reading it.
Oh, God. Okay. $10 from Puffy Cloud. 3d6 or 4d6 and drop the low for Riz. I don't know what any of this means.
3d6. It's whether or not you roll 3 6-sided dice or roll 4 6-sided dice and drop the lowest result.
Got it.
It's a gaming thing.
Yep, that's why I know nothing.
I'm hardcore. Just do the 3d6. But at that point, with 3d6, you might as well just roll a d20 and I don't know, drop the high and low. Who knows? Anyway, first of all, huge thank you to our call screener and to all of our moderators who have been taking care of the show tonight. Thank you to everybody who sent in super chats. We don't always do $5 and up super chats just because it's something that will, it really makes the show run long. And so normally it's $10 here, but I wanted to do it, which reminds me that we just got another one and another one. So there's a couple coming in. So $5 Canadian from Wonder Woman. Great chats tonight. Many time face palming some of the caller responses. Thank you for giving me food for thought. I'm a deconstructed SDA. And here's another one for you.
Spider Monkey 72, $9.99. Hey, just wanted to say that I really appreciate you, Matt. You helped me immensely during my deconversion. Hope you have a wonderful day or night wherever you are. Amazing.
Thank you so much, Spider Monkey. And here's one for me to read from some guy. $10 from Jimmy Snow. My least fave Gen Z thing is making random coming noises to show approval.
Is this a thing?
I think Jimmy just made that up. He definitely just made that up.
I love that both of us were like, is this really a thing?
Yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Snow. Hopefully you don't fire me. And in this case, let me just say, huge thank you to all of our moderators and to call screener and to Arden, the lovely and talented producing down the hall. Don't forget that we've been having little issues with YouTube. And as I mentioned before, you can check out linemerch.com. You can go to patreon.com/calltheline. And if you are interested in being considered for one of the debate programs that are coming up, you can go to qnaline.com and there's a form that you can fill out there to say, hey, I'd like to be on NBOSS or whatever. There's another super chat that came in. I'm going to read this super chat and then I'm going to turn the show over to Eve to let you know what to expect next week on Chewed Gum and to close out the show. But Monkey at Typewriter says, Matt, you so old. You probably know how to calculate to hit armor class 0. You're gay, homie. You're all lovely. Thanks for the call the other day. Thank you, Monkey at Typewriter. I no longer remember how to calculate to hit armor class 0, but I do know what it means. Eve, close us out.
Yeah, so Tuesday night, 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, Alyssa Ljub and I are going to be back, and you never know what we're going to talk about. This last week, we talked about sex toys and the stigma surrounding bringing those up with a partner or even by yourself, and we took some really awesome calls. David, who you heard earlier, he called and was talking about the idea of pleasure and how that eventually leads to suffering, of course. So I don't know what we'll end up talking about. In fact, you should message Alyssa and I if you guys have some ideas for things you want to hear more about. But I'm excited either way.
That'll do it. Thanks, everybody, for tuning in. We'll see you all next time. Don't forget about Transatlantic Call-In Show tomorrow at 2 p.m. Central. I'm assuming it's still at 2 p.m. with Arden and Dr. Ben.
No, it's actually at 5, but
it's actually at 5 because I was not. It's my fault
because it is.
I moved it.
Oops, and I didn't reset the song, so that was a very awkward transition.
I was like, I don't remember normally hearing this show, but I do remember seeing all those names there that are patron producers. Thank you guys so much. We look forward to hanging out. Don't forget about the Eclipse coming up and all the shows on the Line Network. You can go to patreon.com/